Warhammer x LOTM, The Black Emperor by author Jiao Chao Emo. Chapter 901-920. 901, The Olive Branch Thrown by Malcador Cannot Satisfy Me. Chapter 901, The Olive Branch Thrown by Malcador Cannot Satisfy My Appetite. In the meeting room of the Vengeful Spirit, Garviel Loken, captain of the 10th Company of the Luna Wolves, stood in the shadows behind Horus Lupercal. He was curious about Nimrod, who stood beside his Gene father. The forces deployed by the Luna Wolves were twice those of the Order Shadow, yet it was the latter who first stepped across the equator. After Loken returned to the warship, he performed several simulations within the tactical network, but he could never figure out why the Order Shadow advanced so swiftly. In his final simulation before his father called the meeting, he used what Lord Dorn called reverse deduction. If you are unsure how to construct a fortress, you should change your perspective and think about the defensive effect you require. Loken believed Lord Dorn's words also applied to warfare, especially when the situation was indiscernible. After summarizing the information from the tactical briefings, he found some leads. For the Order Shadow to advance to the center of our battle line, they must have ensured smooth communication links from the beginning, but astropaths cannot adapt to the brutal warfare on Murder Planet. Was it truly as Abaddon said, that the Order Shadow are all warlocks who use supernatural powers to ensure communication? The Emperor has already issued the Edict of Nicaea, and even Father has ordered the librarians to return to their respective companies, yet Lord Nimrod actually dares to ignore it directly. The Order Shadow had a clear objective, taking away every megarochnid tree they encountered. But they only needed to be destroyed. It was strange that they were uprooting the megarochnid trees. Lord Nimrod has a special fondness for exotic flora and fauna, they must be presenting the megarochnid trees to Lord Nimrod. Although Lord Nimrod fought on treacherous battlefields, it was different from the silent hunting of the Lion of Caliban. He was interested in many things. It was said that the Shadow of Sovereignty held many curiosities presented to him by various legions and auxilia. Lord Nimrod would always examine them with care. It was said he spent more time on this than on practicing his swordsmanship. Yet he was famous for his swordsmanship, and rumors that Lord Leman Russ had been utterly crushed in strength, agility, and skill had already spread throughout the legions. Lord Nimrod had even broken the silver hand defense of Lord Ferrus Manus. Loken had once curiously asked Lord Dorn about the result of his duel with Lord Manus. Lord Dorn did not answer, only saying that the silver hand was the toughest defense in the physical world. But that silver hand had been shattered by Lord Nimrod. I wonder what the outcome would be if Father clashed with Lord Nimrod. As Loken pondered, he saw his father turn to look at Nimrod. Sanguinius has already begun reducing the involvement of librarians in operations. You should do the same, this is Father's requirement for us. Nimrod looked at Sanguinius, whose white wings were folded, and nodded. I am working on it, but it will take time. That's right, I only need 2 years to transition. After 2 years, it will naturally be open and legitimate. Seeing Nimrod accept his advice, Horus nodded with a smile. Now, we should discuss how to deal with the uninvited guests. We should play different roles. I think you should be firm with them. The nobles of Terra still remember that night. They call it the Night of Blood. I'm to play the bad cop. Nimrod nodded. Compared to the Holy Archangel and the Wise Warmaster, he, whom the nobles called the Blood Sovereign, was more suited to play the villain. Fine. Horus and Sanguinius glanced at each other, understanding each other's thoughts. Although coordinated operations couldn't be achieved on Murder Planet due to the presence of the megarochnid trees, the rift has been mended by adopting the comprehensive drop tactic proposed by Nimrod. While they were considering this, a cold mist filled the air, and the hatch slid open. The delegation leader, Aenid Rathbone, entered the meeting room. The high-ranking official of the Council of Terra had red hair and a pale, delicate face. She was tall and slender, yet she held her neck high, making her cheekbones stand out even more. Respected Warmaster, Lord Nimrod, Lord Sanguinius. After bowing to the 3 Primarchs, her voice was as impassioned as a preacher's. Terra and the Forge worlds cannot carry this heavy burden forever. Now that we are the masters of 1,000,000 worlds, the Imperium must gradually begin to sustain its own operations. Many worlds have only just submitted, they have not yet recovered from the war and are currently unable to withstand the blow of taxation, Sanguinius said softly. The Emperor insists upon it. Nimrod's eyes narrowed, catching the loophole in her words from a lawyer's perspective. Does the Emperor insist upon it? Rathbone's eyes twitched as she looked at the Blood Sovereign. She had read Lord Nimrod's biography, Shadow Sovereign, before coming and knew well his wisdom and sharpness. The Emperor's Sigillite emphasized to us that we must collect taxes and establish a sound mechanism to ensure that taxes are collected automatically and regularly. She raised her voice. The Council of Terra has issued an edict that all expeditionary fleets, all Primarchs, and all submitted governors should collect taxes from the planets under their jurisdiction to alleviate the Imperium's financial burden. Rathbone looked at Lord Nimrod. The Sigillite emphasized that this move is not intended to impose a financial burden on the Primarchs. The Vostroya sector once served as the engine of the Imperium, contributing to the Great Crusade. Following the agreement reached between the Sigillite and you, Terra will never tax it. The colonized new district is still growing. It will serve as a civilizational achievement of the Great Crusade and will not be included in the scope of taxation. Horus's brow furrowed. Malkador was choosing Nimrod as the breakthrough point. He had directly waived taxes on Nimrod's two largest territories, using privilege to win Nimrod over to the taxation camp. Horus looked at Nimrod to see his decision. Rathbone also looked at Nimrod. The olive branch thrown by the Sigillite offered Lord Nimrod immense benefits. The authority and status of the planetary governors will be lost once taxation begins. Nimrod spoke, still expressing opposition under Rathbone's stunned gaze. His ambition pulsed. Malkador, the olive branch you threw still cannot satisfy my appetite. The Vostroya sector and the colonized new district are far from enough. There is also the Osiris sector, the Necromunda sub-sector. Even the future Calixus sector and the sector Rosicky named in place of Orpheus. Nimrod didn't want to pay anything, and he certainly wouldn't let a taxation team audit his territories, not a single one. Nimrod actually refused. This is different from the person in the biography. Rathbone thought in confusion. Horus's eyes brightened. Nimrod had not been swayed by petty interests in the face of major principles. The Council of Terra is placing a heavy burden on the shoulders of emerging worlds, which may overwhelm the rule we are barely maintaining. Taxation is premature, its scope is too broad, and it is extremely harsh. Many worlds will rise in rebellion. The Warmaster stared at Rathbone, calmly analyzing the situation. The peasants we conquered will only shrug when they hear they have a new master. But if they hear they must surrender 1/5 of their income, they will surely raise their pitchforks. Everything we have fought for until now will be destroyed by the flames of war. Nimrod nodded silently as he listened to Horus's prophetic words. Although the massive resource consumption of the Great Crusade has brought Terra close to collapse, Horus is absolutely right, it is indeed too early. With a single call from Horus, many worlds would defect without hesitation. From a future perspective, after Malkador's divine assist to Lorgar at Nicaea, he has made another wrong decision. But this is the will of the Sigillite and the Emperor, you must comply, Rathbone said, holding high the scepter with the imperial aquila. This is the decision of the Council of Terra. We have already formulated relevant rules and standards to calculate the appropriate tax rate for each world proportionally. I will cooperate with your work, Horus said after a few seconds of silence. Once Rathbone left, he rubbed the gold ring on his right pinky finger. Nimrod was right, no one knows the son better than the father. Father would never approve of such an action, it is far too early. He is occupied with important matters, and the Council of Terra has bypassed him to act on its own. We must take a clever approach, give those tax collectors the cold shoulder. Nimrod nodded. You should provide them with extra information on the specific conditions of each world, letting them dig for useful data like searching for pearls in a vast sea of documents. Horus hadn't expected Nimrod to guess his thoughts so quickly. Exactly, this will buy us some breathing room. I will complete the Great Crusade and then return to Terra to have a talk with Father. Nimrod nodded. Horus's idea was good. If they could delay through this period, the Imperium's political landscape would undergo a massive change after the Great Birthday celebration, and then there would be a better chance to align taxation with his own interests. 902, the Emperor handed us over to A. Chapter 902, the Emperor handed us over to a tyrant who only wanted to watch us be forgotten and die. 002, M31, Nation of Disorder, the fourth layer of space. Nellet Killen knelt in the black mist, respectfully performing a kowtow to the Black Emperor high upon the throne. My lord, Corax has gathered all the Terra born within the Legion, except for about 500 people including Balsa Kuturi and Alistair Rorschach. Together with the Deliverance born who do not accept his ideology, there are 11,952 people in total. Corax still refused to see any of us, he was even too begrudging to tell us personally before our exile, relaying his orders through Calvus instead. Nellet spoke with a mix of self-mockery and resentment. Nimrod nodded. It hadn't been in vain that he had proactively requested to support Corax during the Battle of Gate 42, sending out the main force of the 10th chapter. The Ashen Claws chapter has nearly 8,000 more people than the 4,000 I remember from when they were exiled, turning them from a surprise force into a power that can influence the balance of a campaign to some extent. While Nimrod was deep in thought, Nellet continued his report. We have boarded 36 capital ships and 62 frigates, and have been ordered to launch an expedition toward the Ghoul sector in the northeastern part of the galaxy, away from Deliverance. The destination for the Ashen Claws exile was the same as in his memory, but the fleet was nearly 3 times larger than the scale of 13 capital ships and 20 frigates. Although there was no unique warship like the Kraken, vessels such as the Hades-class battleship Vicious Claw were still powerful capital ships. The Kraken. Speaking of which, the consolation gift the Emperor sent me, the Miraculous, is also about to arrive at the Kaliam Gate. I want to see just what is so miraculous about it. Nimrod pulled his thoughts back and said to Nellet in a deep voice. There is no need to worry. For the time being, execute Korax's orders, head to the Ghoul sector, and await my summons. The Black Emperor's majesty dispelled the gloom shrouding him. He felt that rather than being neglected and despised by his father, it was better to break free from the shackles and serve the Black Emperor. He looked up at the towering figure on the throne. I obey your will. The black mist swallowed Nellet and then immediately receded. Nellet had returned to his flagship, the Vicious Claw. As he stepped out of the captain's quarters, he issued an order to the sound array master. Open a fleet-wide broadcast. I have something to say to them. Accompanied by a piercing hum, the sound array master reported back. Lord Nellet, everyone can hear your words now. I am Nellet. Nellet's voice rang out on every warship. The Emperor handed us over to a tyrant who only wanted to watch us be forgotten and die. Now, the shackles of slavery will no longer bind our necks. We will no longer be loyal to the Horus who used us, nor will we submit to a failing empire. Nellet's voice suddenly rose. We shall serve the king of Vostroya. He led me to crush the Xenos in Shana, and he lent a helping hand at Stargate 42. We will obtain everything that this empire would never give us, Shepard, Nellet said meaningfully. Lure, the assassination elite who had been repeatedly slamming his head against an adamantium pillar, suddenly stopped. Blood dripped down like a string of beads, staining a large section of the deck red. He looked at the black armor warrior standing before him like a marble statue. I am Ramsey. I have heard that some Raven Guard eventually overcame the ash blindness. I hope you can do the same. As the voice echoed, the dense darkness in his eyes faded slightly. In the Kaliam Gate space, the shadow of sovereignty warped into real space. Nimrod leaned back against the black throne on the bridge and asked the female captain, Diana Pauline, with a smile. Where is the Emperor's gift? Diana buried herself in the console, reviewing all the data transmitted to her by the simulacrum sanctum. A strange light suddenly flared in her blue-green eyes. My lord, we cannot see it. What I mean is, we have received communication signals from the Miraculous, and it is right here. As she spoke, she left the console and walked to the holographic strategy table. She raised her hand to outline a narrow region of space, approximately 380 kilometers long and 160 kilometers wide. They told me they are in this area, but we cannot capture any ship signals within it. As of now, we have only captured discontinuous and even contradictory signals. We cannot lock onto a specific location based on them, we can only provide a vague positioning. Psychic stealth. The thought flashed through Nimrod's mind, but the Emperor's words at Nicaea were that the Miraculous had nothing to do with psychic powers, and its wonders came entirely from the physical world. While thinking, Nimrod stood up from his throne. Open the viewport. The hum of a motor sounded as the shutters slowly rose. The Primarch strolled to the front of the panoramic viewing window, his obsidian eyes gazing out at the cosmos. One space station after another flew past. They were not part of the Stargate itself but were structures attached to the main body. Most of them were controlled by family members of the Kaliam Gate officers, who operated bars and other entertainment industries to provide fun for the crews passing through. In an instant, Nimrod's consciousness spread to the range demarcated by the simulacrum sanctum. Amidst the flowing starlight, there seemed to be a veil covering something. Interesting. The Miraculous seems to be able to manipulate the starlight in the void to hide the ship. The builders of the dark age of technology certainly had some peculiar skills. As Nimrod pondered, light and shadow flickered in his eyes, and he suddenly injected telekinesis into his consciousness. The field covered by his consciousness changed abruptly. The space station was deconstructed into steel, cables, and energy. The flowing starlight rapidly turned into lines, some looping into rings, others layered upon each other like a veil. Whoosh! As the Primarch deconstructed the material structure with telekinesis, the blurred vision gradually became clear. The hull hidden within the curtain of starlight slowly emerged. However, it was not a metal structure. Curved lines gathered into one spherical orb after another. Each orb had a different diameter. The one in the middle was the smallest, only 1 kilometer. The one at the stern was the largest, with a diameter of 5 kilometers. Between it and the sinking fourth orb, dozens of light bands were connected. One sank while the other rose, like a swinging tail hammer. Between the 5 celestial bodies were shining bands of light connecting the entire ship, within which crew members could be faintly seen walking. Building a ship by linking celestial bodies together is truly a unique idea. And it seems to be able to change forms as well. The name, Miraculous, is indeed well deserved. After Nimrod observed with interest for a while, he spoke to give instructions. Tell Santiago that the miraculous will belong to him. He must make good use of the power of the celestial bodies to create his own miracles. Arsene Adun, standing in attendance nearby, said, I obey your will. After taking the order, the Primarch's attendant continued. My lord, the royal court viscounts of the 3rd chapter have arrived at Calayam Gate in accordance with your orders. I see. 903. Awakening memories sealed by the Emperor will not be a pleasant experience. Calayam Gate Star Zone, Shadow of Sovereignty, Primarch's office. Nimrod leaned back on his throne, watching as Bukayo Alshaven, lord of the 3rd chapter, led 15 soul assurers, including 1st Company Captain Alexander, Captain of the 2nd Company Mikhailovsky, and 3rd Captain Zhegosh, into the office. The Order shadows, clad in Pluto-type Terminator armor, nearly filled the Primarch's spacious office. My lord. Bukayo was the first to remove his helmet, and Alexander followed suit with a salute. Nimrod nodded and gave his orders. Your next mission is to travel with the counts of the 5th chapter and prepare for a journey through the warp. During this journey, you will receive new power from me and be promoted to counts of the royal court. The promotion ritual for sequence 5 of the darkness pathway, Spirit Warlock, required finding a way to enter the warp in physical form rather than as a soul, merging with the key information of one's own reflection in the warp, and then consuming the potion. The travelers of sequence 5 of the door pathway had marked 4 special coordinates in the warp. Among them, the Crave origin space and the home of the psionic drakes were both special pocket dimensions that did not meet their requirements. The soul assurers needed to enter the sea of souls to merge with their own reflections, and the travelers would guide them through the journey. Hearing this, Bukayo's obsidian eyes sparkled. Although he was a chapter master, his position within the inner court had been stagnant for a long time, remaining at the level of Viscount. While the Black Emperor's favor had not diminished, other chapter masters had already become counts of the royal court, and even within his own chapter, the number of inner circle members was increasing. Now, he finally had the opportunity to receive the Black Emperor's grace once more. After Bukayo and the others left, Nimrod also rose from his throne. Avoiding everyone's sight, he stepped directly into the Nation of Disorder. Ascending the throne in the 4th level of space, Nimrod extended his spirituality to touch Zahariel's spiritual light orb. Though both were promoting to Spirit Warlock, it would be much easier for Zahariel. As a gene son of Lionel Johnson, Zahariel was the best inheritor of his spatial talent among all Dark Angels. Speaking of which, the current Lion's control over the spatial domain of the demonic system is still too shallow. Zahariel's fear vision involves much more marvelous operations. Nimrod remembered that Lion had found his own warp imagery, a forest, in the black forests of Caliban. But unlike Magnus, who frequently communicated with the Emperor in the warp while Tzeentch wove the strings of fate to prepare knowledge for him, Lion's spatial abilities were not passive like the prophetic powers of Sanguinius and Conrad Kurz. Although in his memory, after being invaded by the King of the Harif in his mental world, Lion could rely on his spatial perception talent to locate the Xenos' original home world, it was only after waking up 10,000 years later that he gradually mastered abilities like teleportation. Nimrod reigned in his thoughts and extended his spirituality to touch Zahariel's spiritual light orb. He saw Zahariel standing alone in the wilderness, the trees of the dark forest rustling in the wind. Zahariel was staring intently at a corpse on the blood-covered floor of a tower. Nimrod thoughtfully projected a thought into the pitch-black spiritual orb, find another place and set up the Euclidean rune. Zahariel's body trembled as black mist rose in his mind. Deep within the black mist, a grand figure sat high upon a throne. Zahariel clasped his hands in reverse and immediately went into action, finding a semi-intact tower. He poured his spirituality into his force staff, quickly tapping out geometry patterns on the ground. Instantly, the black mist swallowed Zahariel. Zahariel's body jerked in alertness, but when he realized he had arrived in that familiar, mysterious realm, his tensed body finally relaxed. He looked at the grand figure on the throne with awe and knelt on one knee. My lord, the one you found at Stonehorn was a corpse. Nimrod, shrouded deep in the black mist, asked with a slight frown. After Seraphax stole the Chaos Grimoires of the Sirius Knights, Luther and the others had been tracking him, as well as this destroyed knightly order. Nimrod remembered there were 5 survivors of the Sirius Knights, 3 were corpses in the wilderness providing no information, and one's whereabouts were unknown. He had given the information on all 5 to the Dark Angel's second-in-command Luther, first chapter master Urian Bendrag, and librarian Zahariel. Urian had quickly found the remains of the 3 in his jurisdiction, only to find their spirits had already dissipated. Nimrod knew they were chaos cultists. Even in death, their souls would fall into the stomachs of the 4 vendors, making it impossible to gain information even through mediumship. He hadn't held much hope for those 3, hoping instead to get information from the 4th person. Your lordship is wise, it is indeed so. I followed your guidance and found him in a collapsed tower near Stonehorn. Nimrod frowned slightly. He remembered that when Sar Daviel, who had raised Lion alongside Luther, tracked the Sirius Knight to Stonehorn, the knight was alive, only committing suicide by jumping into the sea when he had no other way out. He had originally hoped that the soul assurer Zahariel could pacify the Sirius Knight and use his nightmare abilities to dig out hidden secrets. Caliban, changes. Could it be Zinch causing trouble again? My lord, I failed to complete your task. Please punish me. It is not your fault, Nimrod said in a deep voice. With a thought, the space apes in the first level of space began using materials like spirit thornwood to concoct the spirit warlock potion. I shall grant you new power. Use these new abilities to continue the investigation. I failed to complete the Black Emperor's oracle, yet he still grants me new power. I advised Luther and saved our father from an attack, but simply because I later kept the secret for Luther, who was a squire then, I was exiled back to Caliban by my father. Lion, you once told me that on Caliban, only we are special, that we both killed the great lions, yet you exiled me without mercy. Zahariel's emotions were a mess. Memories of Lion's cold gaze during the meeting and the Black Emperor's patience and encouragement while teaching him flashed through his mind. My lord, I thank you for your tolerance. I will surely make good use of the power you have bestowed. You must go to the warp and merge with your own reflection. Nimrod's gaze was deep, thinking of the pain Zahariel would feel once his memories were unlocked. When you gain this power, it will awaken the memories sealed within you by the Emperor and Ismael. It will not be a pleasant experience. As he spoke, he flipped his wrist, and a bottle of pitch-black potion appeared in his palm. With a thought from Nimrod, the potion flew toward Zahariel. The Emperor, sealed memories. Golden, blurred shadows rose in Zahariel's mind, golden light erupting from the Emperor's eyes. He had inspected my psionic talent. What else did he do? What is it? Zahariel frowned deeply as he caught the potion. He looked up at the throne. No matter what happened in the past, I can face it. My faith in you will not change, even if Caliban is destroyed and Lion dies. Nimrod nodded slightly. With a thought, he sent Zahariel back to Stonehorn on Caliban. 7. 904, Emperor, the Knights of Caliban are not slaves. Caliban, Northrock region. Zahariel returned to the tower in a daze. As the black mist receded, he raised his right hand and looked at the potion bestowed upon him by the Black Emperor. Within the pitch-black potion were tiny pale specks. Holding it in his palm felt like possessing a strange power, his surging thoughts gradually calmed. Zahariel unslung the force staff from his back, infused it with spirituality, and quickly unsealed the Euclidean rune. Then, he immediately followed the Black Emperor's command to complete the sacred ritual. Zahariel awakened the terrifying memories branded in his mind. In the deep forest, a lion beast opened its bloody maw, its cold teeth flashing like sharp blades. Zahariel's pupils dilated rapidly, swallowing his eyes. His twin hearts pumped powerfully, and adrenaline secreted. Zahariel's body faded rapidly, and he vanished from the spot instantly. Whoosh! His figure reappeared 3 meters away, as if he had teleported. Zahariel activated Fear Vision, an ability held by fewer than 10 people in human history. In a single breath, he leapt continuously between the warp and the material world. On the other side of the mirror, Zahariel saw countless flashes of light streaking past him. Blood-colored predators, pitch-black oily tentacles. Jumping back to the material world, Zahariel's gaze quickly turned pitch-black as he ascended into the 3rd level of Magnus's state of mind. In the next instant, jumping back to reality, the colors in his vision became distinct. The blood red was redder, the pitch-black was blacker. The librarian's eyes were deep as he distinguished and searched among the thousands of lights. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths. Zahariel's gaze swept across millions of lights, finally settling on a night sky dotted with stars. Since he received power from the Black Emperor, his warp imagery had been fixed as a pitch-black night sky shrouding Caliban. In the next instant, returning to the physical world, Zahariel shifted his state of mind from the 3rd level of Magnus down to the 2nd. Countless noisy voices rang in his ears. Caliban was whispering to the librarian. Using fear vision again to leap into the warp, Zahariel felt a powerful tugging force, like a rope pulling him toward the stars shrouded in the pitch-black night. Rustling, murmuring voices poured into his ears as countless voices called out to him. Zahariel raised his hand, and the lion's sword fell into his palm. His eyes flashed, and his body flickered continuously, as if hundreds of people were appearing simultaneously to launch an attack. Countless sword lights erupted, drowning out numerous figures. He swept aside the warp creatures tempting his soul toward unity and suddenly plummeted toward the stars shrouded in the pitch-black night. A spiny head popped out from the end of a long serpent, and sharp fangs swept like a logging saw. A sharp tail hook whipped out from a bovine body, whistling as it struck. Once Zahariel's figure entered the dark, deep forest, he involuntarily slowed down. A tranquil atmosphere permeated the air, his every movement slowed, stretching out into afterimages. Zahariel swung his sword repeatedly, slashing at one Calibanite beast after another. He felt that advancing through this eerie forest was more difficult than trekking across a planet covered in quagmires. Zahariel's breathing grew slower and slower, and his powerful body felt as if it were in shackles. The arm wielding the lion's sword grew heavy, and his stamina drained rapidly. Zahariel maintained fear vision, cycling between the physical world and the warp. After an unknown amount of time, his eyes suddenly narrowed. Click-clack, click-clack. Zahariel suddenly saw a massive shadow pressing down. Its wings were thin and transparent, with horny carapaces along the edges. Its body resembled a lion of ancient Terra, with a slender neck as long as its torso. Its spiny head snapped repeatedly, making a clicking sound. Whoosh! A barbed hook whistled through the air, striking directly at Zahariel's chest. A scene from his memory suddenly flashed in his mind, overlapping with the current situation. The lion beast. The Calibanite beast that only he and his father had ever hunted. An achievement even the great Luther had failed to attain. Just as Zahariel was about to swing the lion's sword at the lion beast, he suddenly had a realization. He puffed out his chest, extended his right arm, and let the lion's sword hang toward the ground. The lion beast's tail hook whistled down onto the crown of Zahariel's head. Rumble. Countless spheres of light exploded in Zahariel's mind. If this is the best you can do. Namir quipped while jumping back to dodge Zahariel's thrust. Then you'd better give up now. The memories lost to the transformation surgeries were recovered at this moment. Zahariel and Namir were only a few weeks apart in age, cousins from different backgrounds but related by blood. They came from different branches of the same noble family, inheriting the lean faces and aquiline noses of their common ancestor, which often led to them being mistaken for brothers. The bond between them was far deeper than their physical resemblance. They had trained and grown up together in the order, relying on and competing with each other. As countless images flashed by, Zahariel knew he had followed the Black Emperor's orders and found the key information reflecting himself in the warp. He raised his left arm, tilted his head back, and downed the pitch-black potion. As the potion slid down his throat, the pale specks rose and bloomed like fireworks. Burning golden light tore through his mind. It was as if a dam had burst in Zahariel's brain, releasing a suppressed flood of memories. The voice of librarian Israfel echoed in the darkness. The plot has failed, the conspirators are being interrogated. We will soon discover who was behind the attempt to attack us and assassinate the Emperor. Mydia's voice followed, tell us everything, leave nothing out. When did Ural's plan begin? Zahariel looked toward the shimmering figure at the door of the interrogation room. His face was so radiant that details were impossible to discern. The Emperor of Mankind's voice was like surging waves. He must not be allowed to remember this. There must be no suspicion of dissent within the Legion. Zahariel collapsed to his knees, his body trembling violently. His memories, his loyalty, they had been manufactured. Zahariel was overwhelmed by a sense of betrayal and violation. Emperor, Israfel, you tampered with my memories and interfered with my thoughts. A knight is not a slave, the decision should have been mine to make. The Terra-born might be influenced by the radiance of that figure, content to be slaves submissive to the throne. But he was a man of Caliban, a knight's loyalty was not that of an enslaved serf. Zahariel abruptly dropped the lion's sword from his palm, as if discarding a red-hot branding iron. Lion, he knew as well. He allowed the Emperor and the Terrans to tamper with my memories, forcing me to offer my loyalty. In Lion's heart, Caliban is insignificant compared to the Emperor and his Imperium. Zahariel gave a self-deprecating laugh. Indeed, Caliban was but one of a million worlds. Lion was not a man of Caliban, he was a visitor from Terra. He was a Primarch, not a knight of Caliban. No wonder he never returned after leaving Caliban. He exiled us without mercy. The painful memories gradually receded. Zahariel glanced at the lion's sword before bending down to pick it up. He took a step and returned to Caliban. The newly ascended, spirit warlock, felt his own overflowing spirituality, remembering how the power granted by the Black Emperor had torn through his false memories. He knelt with a thud. I am a knight of the Black Emperor. This is the path I choose, not a life manipulated. Greater than 905, our equipment is no worse than the custodians. Kalayam Gate Sector, the Bridge of the Miraculous. Santiago Bobecamp, Lord of the Fifth Chapter, sat within his console, eyes flickering with starlight as he gazed through the panoramic viewport into the void. The sector his eyes were focused on was about 160 kilometers long and 90 kilometers wide. Compared to when the Black Emperor gifted him the Miraculous, which was about 380 kilometers long and 160 kilometers wide, it had decreased by 3/4. He now only needed to complete the final positioning within this narrow sector. Santiago held a brush with a body made of even-numbered black gold and a tip of cold stone in his right hand, dipping it into the spiritual blood of the Sahaduan. Spirituality overflowed from his palm, seeping into the brush as he guided its flow in the manner of an astrologer. The tip flowed with pale blue lines, tracing patterns onto the paper. Santiago stared at the pale blue pattern, comparing it to the patterns drawn on the left and right sides of the desk using the blood of a Fenris kraken and a nocturne salamanders, respectively. After scrutinizing it repeatedly for several seconds, his gaze suddenly tightened. The light ring diameter of the node area marked X19 in the upper left region of the salamanders, fiery colored pattern and the pale blue Sahaduan pattern differed slightly. The diameter of the salamander's pattern was about 1/5 larger than that of the Sahaduan one. After noting this discrepancy, Santiago shifted his gaze to stare at the dark blue kraken pattern and the pale blue Sahaduan pattern, discovering another anomaly in the lower right region. The pale blue light ring was about 1/3 smaller than the dark blue one. When I depicted them, the patterns changed, triggering spirituality, Santiago thought thoughtfully. 2 points, still unable to pinpoint accurately. While lost in thought, Santiago used the brush to dip into spiritual dye made from valve spider blood, continuing to outline lines from the perspective of an astrologer. A third anomaly, a fourth anomaly. Santiago scanned them, his eyes deep, piecing and combining them together. No matter how they were combined, the 4 undulating points could not be arranged into a straight line. After repeatedly confirming there was no error, a new idea sprouted in his mind. Could it be that this is the miraculous? Santiago was about to open the traveler's door, to go directly to the miraculous, but as soon as he outlined a mysterious symbol with his spirituality, he suddenly stopped. The miraculous was gifted to the Black Emperor by the Emperor of Mankind, and the people on the ship must be the ones he mentioned. I am using the power bestowed by my lord, but in the eyes of the ignorant, this is sinful sorcery. Thinking of this, Santiago could only adopt a more traditional method to intercept the miraculous. He opened the chapter's communication channel and began issuing orders. Cosmos, turn to starboard 386, advance at inclination 7. After issuing a series of instructions, Santiago finally switched communication channels to order the helmsman of his flagship, the Star Sovereign. Turn to port 195, advance at inclination 0. The control room of the Miraculous was located in one of the 5 asteroids at the rear. The captain stood respectfully beside a giant clad in golden armor, holding a heavy halberd. Lord Graham, the Order Shadow fleet has deployed in formation, and the Augur has captured that their void engines are accelerating. It is estimated that they will complete the encirclement of us within 5.2 hours. I have already ordered an emergency evasion plan. There is no need. Graham stared at the holographic projection. Stop. He knew that with the Miraculous already basically locked on, it was impossible for these mortals to complete an evasion within the limited space. When the Emperor of Mankind sent him to deliver the Miraculous to the Primarch Nimrod, the order given was, your most important task on this trip is to observe whether Nimrod utilizes psychic powers during the process of locking onto and receiving the Miraculous. When Graham was created by his liege, the talent bestowed upon him was that his perception was sharper than other custodians. Until now, he had not sensed any supernatural power. Graham did not believe Nimrod could conceal himself from his perception. Even though there were rumors in the Empire that Nimrod's psychic ability could rival Magnus, his liege had told him there was no such possibility. Graham knew that the Primarchs were also his liege's creations, and he had endowed them with specific talents when creating them. Lord Nimrod could not possibly deceive his perception. Lord Graham, the Star Sovereign has sent a communication request, asking to board and receive. Request granted, Graham authorized. 32 standard minutes later, a Black Eagle shuttle ejected and flew into the void. Santiago sat in the comfortable leather seat, gazing at the constantly changing celestial bodies in the cosmos, his obsidian eyes gleaming with strange light. To think it was a ship built using meteorites and asteroids as the main material. This is somewhat similar to the Orc asteroid fortresses, but the Greenskins' technology is hard to understand. Ryan Ramirez has researched it for a long time without any results. Humans of the Dark Age of Technology actually mastered such technology, and it seems they connected 5 celestial bodies with mysterious technology, capable of a certain degree of morphological change. While Santiago was lost in thought, the Eagle shuttle landed according to the navigation prompts of the Miraculous. He slowly walked off the deck, following the prompt of his inspiration, and looked at the giant clad in golden armor holding a heavy halberd. Santiago looked at the custodian, thinking, it is said that the gap between custodians and Astartes is like the gap between Astartes and the solar auxilia. But I don't think so. Santiago felt that the threat of the custodian in his inspiration was not as great as the royal court counts, or even some viscounts. As he walked, he scrutinized the custodian's golden armor. Each set of custodian armor is worth an ordinary planet. Tartarus-type armor is naturally not as good. But our armor all has the adaptive and evolutionary system of the Jag set. The more it is used, the more its potential can be developed. I also have the thought servitor that I haven't brought yet, and it was forged by Malevolus himself, who is specifically dedicated to crafting armor for Primarchs. Our armor will not be inferior to the custodians. While Santiago was lost in thought, his gaze finally fell on the custodian's hands. On the index, middle, and ring fingers of his right hand, he wore 3 rings. Rings created by the space ape. Santiago knew that apart from the Black Emperor, only the Emperor of Mankind had the means to compel the space ape, which manufactured items randomly, to create designated items. But it seemed to be limited to ring weapons, or perhaps the Emperor believed that custodians only needed ring weapons. Although custodians had good resistance to psychic spells, they could not use psychic spells themselves. Ring weapons could compensate for their lack of attacks. The corner of Santiago's mouth curled imperceptibly. Royal court viscounts can choose the number of ring weapons at will, and can even wear them on both hands. In this regard, custodians are inferior to us. While Santiago was lost in thought, he arrived in front of the custodian. On behalf of my father, Nimrod, the king of Vostroya, I have come to receive the ship gifted by the Emperor of Mankind. Graham looked at Santiago scrutinizingly, the situation of this Star Lord of the Order Shadow, 5th chapter flashing through his mind. Demonic Psyker, the first psychic artisan of the Order Shadow, and the one who led the repair of the Kalium Gate, these were the 3 most well-known labels on him. Apart from this, he had no other 2 famous battle achievements. Graham stared at Santiago, always feeling that he was not that simple. After a long while, he spoke. Santiago Bobcamp, it belongs to you now. The Emperor of Mankind hopes that both you and your Primarch can understand that there are many miraculous things in reality, and you should not be obsessed with the warp. Do not violate the Edict of Nicaea. 906 Malkador, the influence of Nimrod in the Council of Terra must be reduced. Shadow of Sovereignty, Primarch's office. My lord, Santiago has successfully taken over the miraculous. Arsena Dun reported to the Black Emperor, who was leaning back on his throne. Nimrod nodded. These were the unique warships from the Dark Age of Technology, unearthed by the Empire during the Great Crusade. In addition to Dorn's Phalanx and Typhon's Terminus Est, he had obtained 2 more, the new flagship of the 5th chapter, the Miraculous, and the flagship of the Space Sharks, the Kraken. As Nimrod pondered, the silver-haired Primarch's attendant continued his report. The Warmaster has declared to the Empire that he is renaming his legion the Sons of Horus. Nimrod leaned back against his throne and said with a smile. He has indeed accepted the advice of the Emperor and Sanguinius, setting aside his humility to manifest his own glory. Sooner than I expected. Open black lens bracket. It is sooner than in my memory. It is also time to obtain the Dark Tongue. I hope ULR Patson is in cause, enjoying his retirement, just as in my memory. Close black lens bracket. I want the information of all retired Auxilia soldiers settled in cause over the last 50 years. Although Nimrod remembered the retirement applications submitted after the Battle of Korasorva in 989. M30, considering his influence on cause and a series of other changes, he cautiously requested the last 50 years. As for a longer period, it was unnecessary. To avoid detection by the Emperor, it was impossible for ULR to use the same identity for a long time. Living for 50 years after retiring as an ordinary veteran would be too conspicuous. As you command. Although he found it strange, Arsena did not ask further questions and immediately turned to leave, executing the Black Emperor's oracle. At the same moment the Primarch's attendant was retrieving and compiling the information on the retired soldiers settled in cause. The tax meeting held by the Council of Terra at the Overlord Palace inevitably involved Nimrod. Gentlemen, I believe we should levy taxes on the territories under Lord Nimrod's command. Councillor Foden stood in the center of the floor and said loudly. Although the Osiris sector only has 11 star systems, under the governance of Howard Finder, it is already comparable to most developed subsectors in the segmentum solar. Alicia is the essential path for the 5th core route from the segmentum obscurus to the segmentum solar, and it is also a key node for 35 major trade routes and 81 secondary routes. Upon hearing this, the hundreds of councillors' eyes lit up. Under Howard's governance, Alicia had become one of the Empire's largest trade nodes, comparable only to 16 worlds such as Sepra Mundi in the Vostroya sector of the segmentum obscurus and Abyss Port in the Colonnade New District. But no one dared to propose taxing Sepra Mundi and Abyss Port. Not only had the Sigillite promised never to tax the Vostroya sector and the Colonnade New District, but the name of the Blood King also filled them with terror, and no one dared to reach out toward Lord Nimrod's 2 largest territories. Moreover, it was the second largest production site and the largest sales hub for Eagle shuttles outside of Necromunda, dominating the non-military high-end aviation sector. And there is Necromunda, which is the hive city with the largest population in the Empire, even exceeding Holy Terra. It also possesses massive industrial capacity, capable of rivaling our newly established Forge Worlds. By incorporating the Necromunda subsector, which centers on Necromunda and covers the 6-star systems of the Spider Alliance, into the tax levy, the pressure on supplies will be significantly alleviated. Councillor Foden looked around at the surrounding councillors, his gaze finally resting on the 14 High Lords on the podium. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, my statement is concluded. He walked back to his seat with his head held high. Since he had already offended Nimrod at the Council of Nicaea, there was no turning back. He had already contacted the Belisarius family and met with them, as well as the Wolfblade representatives of the Wolf King on Terra. He had obtained the protection of the Space Wolves. Malkador, shrouded in his hood and holding the scepter from the Emperor, looked down from above. If Foden's proposal were to pass, taxing the Osiris sector, the Necromunda subsector, and Alicia, the fiscal pressure would be significantly reduced, and it would even be possible to build at least 5 new expeditionary fleets. However, Nimrod's reaction had to be considered. Although Malkador did not believe that he, having accepted the Emperor's ruling at Nicaea, would launch a rebellion, he might employ various means to obstruct it, assassinating imperial tax officials, or even inciting the locals to revolt. As Malkador pondered, he saw Councillor Oberon stand up and walk to the center of the floor. Gentlemen, I grew up in the fires of war on Saturn. Every generation of nobility engaged in warfare believes in one principle: we set the rules, and we maintain the functioning of the rules. Soldiers fight for us and defend the rules. Oberon's family controlled the 2nd Saturnine Regiment. When the Solar Auxilia was established early in the Great Crusade, the first 10 cohorts formed were known as the Saturnine Rams. They originated from the Void Heavy Infantry Regiments of the Saturnine Ordo, which voluntarily merged with Terra. Necromunda is the primary recruitment ground for the 4th chapter of the Order Shadow, and Alicia is the primary recruitment ground for the 1st chapter. Once they are taxed, it will have a direct impact on the Order Shadow and will further slow the pace of the Great Crusade. The same should apply to them, as well as worlds like Katachan of the 7th chapter and Thalassa of the 9th chapter. Oberon, covered in medals of honor, swept his sharp gaze across the councillors and walked back to his seat. Open black lens bracket as expected. After Oberon sided with Nimrod at Nicaea, he became a member of his faction. Close black lens bracket. Malkador was not surprised at all. Since their inception, the Saturnine Rams had been old rivals competing with the Chthonian Headhunters. The disciplined, Saturnine Rams, and the Chthonian Headhunters, who came from gang backgrounds, had huge cultural differences and had always maintained similar combat records. Now that Horus had become Warmaster, the Saturnine Rams would naturally lean toward the other competitor, Nimrod. I agree. Everyone looked toward the sound, and then all revealed expressions of astonishment. The first to speak in agreement was actually the representative of the Hyson Trade Association, Harriman of the Hyson family. The Hyson Trade Association was the largest trade organization on Jupiter, and the rivalry and suspicion between the Jovian Void families and the Saturnine regiments had a long history, dating back to when humanity first ventured out from Terra. Although they had allied and collaborated under the Emperor for the last 2 centuries, and the generational hatred had lessened, it had not been completely eliminated. They were still continuing their opposition and struggle. Pedronia Viva of the Capanus family had intended to be the first to speak in agreement, but she was beaten to it by Hyson. She couldn't help but frown in confusion. Her gaze darted between the two in confusion, and she immediately recalled that they had both supported Lord Nimrod at Nicaea. Open black lens bracket. They had not followed Lord Nimrod before. That shift made many nobles feel strange. Could it be? Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Pedronia held her head high. It was the biography I wrote for Lord Nimrod that allowed them to see a more comprehensive and real Lord Nimrod. They eventually made the same decision. Close black lens bracket. Pedronia excitedly lifted her skirt, almost forgetting the etiquette training she had been receiving since she was 3 years old. I agree. I do too. Malkador watched as nearly 100 counselors and 3 high lords, Astropath Prime Nemo G. Ming, the Star Father's envoy of the Navigator families, Lauren Vischer, and Solar Auxilia, Lord Commander Barton Drake, also voiced their support, and he knew that Foden's proposal could not pass. I also agree. Hearing the Sigillite speak, the 5 high lords he had appointed, Minister of the Department of Internal Affairs Simeon Pentasian, Lord Marshal of the Adeptus Arbits Harry Lantar, Minister of the Imperial Archives O'Sheen, Surgeon General of the Hospitaller Order Sidat Yassine Sashel, and Imperial High Lord Minister Jem Marison, successively voiced their agreement. The Council of Terra passed 2 resolutions. The recruitment worlds of the chapters under Nimrod's command would never be taxed. The Osiris sector, the Necromunda sub-sector, and Alicia would remain governed by the Order Shadow, and would never be taxed. There is still an opportunity to levy taxes on worlds like Kaz and Firestorm Star, but before that, the influence of Nimrod in the Council of Terra must be reduced. 907. The Emperor didn't get it, but I want it, and I will have it. 003. M31. Ultima Segmentum, Viridian System, Kaz, Nerd Estuary. The river breeze rustled through fields of flax as the servitor Graft came buzzing along the path. Soldier Patson. It's time to stop. ULR Patson withdrew his gaze from the sky, a bitter smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. He had spent most of the day watching the Eagle shuttles, Stormbirds, and transport ships roaring overhead. In his 45,000 years of life experience, he had seen too many similar situations. Something major was definitely happening on Kaz. A week ago, the frequency of drone patrols had quadrupled. The Order Shadows of Kalka's fortress were repeatedly patrolling the riverbanks. 3 days ago, he went to Numinous City, but the auditors didn't even approve his request to enter. Relying on his experience, he had sneaked into the city the day before yesterday to investigate, but he hadn't obtained the information he wanted. Soldier Patson, it's time to go back, Graft reminded him mechanically. Open black lens bracket. Soldier Patson. Yes, I'm just a veteran now. Close black lens bracket. Patson shook his head. Even if there was something important, it had nothing to do with an ordinary retired veteran like him. He placed the day's meager harvest into the cart. The less than half full load told him just how much time he had spent staring at the sky. Normally, every hour of hard work would yield 2 carts of flax. ULR walked toward his house alongside Graft. Suddenly, he stopped in his tracks. Black armor, golden wings. A giant over 4 meters tall. He had once stood on a hillside, looking out over 30 kilometers away, and witnessed a golden streak of light flash by. He had seen the 330-meter-tall obsidian statue in Numinous City, overlooking the Nerd Estuary. Primarch Nimrod. Open black lens bracket. So, the unusual activity on Kaz this past week was because of Nimrod's arrival. Why has he come here so suddenly? Close black lens bracket. ULR remembered that 4 years ago, when the Reaper Lord of the 7th chapter of the Order Shadow visited, the entirety of Kaz had begun preparations 3 months in advance. Across the Nerd River, he had seen Sanchez, wearing Lehman Russ's wolf helm and the Merkai cloak, with the sword of Kraken at his waist, the man who had brought dishonor to the Space Wolves. As ULR pondered, he felt Nimrod's eyes fall upon him. He instinctively wanted to lower his stance. He had only ever felt this urge to submit before one other person. Although nearly 30,000 years had passed since he left his lord, he still remembered that same supernatural charisma and majesty. ULR gritted his teeth, resisting the impulse born of instinct. Just as he was using his will to resist the supernatural majesty, a calm voice, sounding as if it came from a deep well, rang in his ears. Won't you invite me in for a seat? All of Kaz is yours. Do you need my permission to go anywhere? ULR countered. If you're really asking me, I'd ask you to leave. My little hut isn't suitable for someone like you, he said, gesturing with his hand. Nimrod was taken aback. He hadn't expected ULR to be so dismissive after recognizing him. In that case, I won't beat around the bush. There are secrets in your mind that I require. As the Primarch spoke, a flicker of light passed through his obsidian eyes, and his consciousness began to spread toward ULR. ULR sensed something and stared warily at Nimrod. When his lord needed to know a secret, he would use psychic powers to delve into others' minds. ULR had heard that Nimrod and Magnus also possessed telepathic abilities. He felt his thoughts stall, and everything around him slowed down. Graft's movements as he pushed the flax-laden cart slowed bit by bit, as if his mechanical body hadn't been maintained for 100 years. ULR knew it wasn't time slowing down, but Nimrod's thoughts invading his mind and interfering with his own. Past memories began to flow involuntarily through his mind. The Battle of Austerlitz, where he ascended the Pratzen Heights and planted Napoleon's banner on the summit. The Battle of Verdun, where he lay in cold trenches, watching enemy after enemy fall on the meat grinder battlefield, their blood staining the earth red. The memory stopped at a certain moment, in East Phoenicia. Warmaster ULR Patzen's banner fluttered as he walked side by side with his lord. A towering spire abruptly appeared in his field of vision, tens of thousands of meters high. It was perfectly aligned axially, something that could not be achieved by the construction techniques of this era. It looked like a clockwork piece carved by divine power. Nimrod, so you've come for the Dark Tongue. Uller's voice echoed within, deep and resonant, as if sounding from ancient times. You're just like him, both so arrogant, thinking you can control everything. Nimrod saw a king dressed in magnificent bronze armor, his eyes flashing as he stared intently at the tower. ULR, we cannot destroy it. No, my lord. The Dark Tongue is too dangerous, we must destroy it. ULR stood before his lord, arguing loudly. No, Warmaster. The king's tone was sharp and left no room for doubt. I can control it, and I will prove it to you. With that, he stepped past ULR and walked toward the tower. Uller's eyes dimmed, he shook his head and drew a dagger from his waist. He strode forward and plunged the dagger deep into his lord's back. Blood stained the white cloak, and the king cried out in shock, ULR. Thud. The king crashed to the ground, and ULR glanced at his unconscious lord. You will never understand that some powers cannot be controlled. Rumble. The tower shattered with a roar, debris falling like hail. I stopped him, and I can stop you now. You will get nothing. Nimrod witnessed ULR backstabbing the emperor, but he failed to discover the process of him ascending the tower, witnessing the Dark Tongue, and finally using it to destroy the tower. He felt Uller's mind, tempered through 40,000 years of warfare, erupting with a fierce resolve driven by an iron will. His weathered, wrinkled face seemed to become sharp and angular. His prominent nose stood as high as a mountain peak, and his sunken eyes were as deep as canyons. Boom, boom, boom. An invisible collision erupted in the supernatural realm. Nimrod's spreading mental tentacles seemed to crash against a mountain peak. Uller's guarded mind made him feel as if he had fallen among mountains. Even with his psychic power poured into his consciousness, Nimrod could not cross it. That he didn't get it is his business, Nimrod's lips curled. The ambition of the mentor of disorder surged. I want it, and I will have it. Rumble. Along with his words, the earth between the mountains trembled. The tower rose from the ground out of thin air, and ULR walked into it like a puppet. He gazed at the script engraved on the tower. It was the Dark Tongue, the language that was an anti-language. Nimrod committed one ancient word after another to memory until ULR found that mysterious term. He shouted out the non-word of power. Destructive power blanketed the tower. Swirling flames engulfed the perpetual ULR Patzen, blasting him into a speck of dust. The earth shook violently, and a blinding light erupted from the tower, shooting straight into the sky. The tower cracked and collapsed, destroyed by the force of the explosion. Nimrod's consciousness was slammed back into his body, the searing heat wave in his mind causing him to let out a muffled groan. He endured the mental agony but was overjoyed. He had obtained the Dark Tongue. The Dark Tongue was an ancient language, but it was not used for communication. It was a tool, a weapon. When spoken aloud or written down, it could manipulate the very fabric of the material universe, possessing power that surpassed even the strongest of psychers. Using it required no psychic ability, anyone could use it. Nimrod ascended to the Thelema third layer state of mind, feeling the mental tremors gradually subside, and turned his gaze toward ULR Patzen. 908. Nimrod, your promise is meaningless, you can give me nothing. ULR Patzen, thank you for your cooperation. Nimrod said solemnly, you have a promise from me. Laughable. ULR said mockingly, I need nothing. I can earn military merits and use them to exchange for land, seeds, and everything else I need. The power, status, endless wealth, or even entire worlds you give to others are meaningless to me. The corner of Uller's mouth twitched. You have witnessed the past between the Emperor and me, you know he craves the Dark Tongue. If I were to tell him the Dark Tongue, he would give me everything, far beyond everything you, a Primarch, possess. Nimrod knew Uller's words were no exaggeration. He knew even better that even if ULR didn't give the Emperor the Dark Tongue, as long as he was willing to serve the Emperor again, he could get almost anything he wanted. The Emperor valued ULR even more than he had thought. In the Emperor's heart, ULR was a true friend in his long life. Even after being backstabbed, he still regarded ULR as a dear friend. ULR was the one person who could truly change the Emperor's mind, the only one. Malcador and Erda knew, and John Grammaticus knew as well. The Emperor had decided to become the Dark King to fight Horus Lupercal, who possessed the power of the Chaos Gods, the Four Gods. Only ULR could awaken his remaining humanity and make him think seriously and reconsider his decision. And only ULR could rebuke his foolishness and condemn his cowardice. Even the Emperor's Sigillite did not have Uller's influence. Nimrod gave ULR a promise. More important than the return of the Dark Tongue was that he had to ensure ULR stepped onto the arena of the vengeful spirit. Otherwise, once the Emperor decided to become the Dark King and ULR did not appear in time, most of humanity would die. Although Nimrod could pull the connected order shadows and some others into the nation of disorder, hundreds of millions of humans in his territory would lose their lives, a price he could not accept. ULR must appear on the vengeful spirit. This was the most critical part of the great birthday celebration, or the Dark King would destroy almost the entire human race. Nimrod did not know if his own presence would trigger a butterfly effect, causing ULR Patson not to appear on the vengeful spirit in time. Especially since Kaz was now his territory, not Guilliman's. The word bearers might no longer launch an attack on Kaz, and ULR might not witness the atrocities they committed and decide to seek out the Emperor. Grammaticus might not have found him in the Battle of Kaz either, reminding him, I mean all of humanity. The entire human race needs you, ULR. Everything is a total mess, very, very bad, you simply wouldn't believe it. He will lose, and if he loses, we all lose. Nimrod certainly hoped ULR wouldn't demand a promise from him. He hoped ULR could team up with Graft, Dojent Crank, Baal Ran, Hebe Zeebs, and Kat, as in his memory, and undergo a long journey through time and space, finally arriving at Terra. After that, he would embark on the final stage of his 45,000-year life. He would persuade the Emperor to give up becoming the Dark King and confront Horus in the right way. He would deliver the key weapon for victory to the Emperor, the ritual dagger to kill Horus. Soldier Patson would face Horus directly, protecting the unconscious the Emperor, leaving behind a hymn of human courage. He was annihilated by a single claw from Horus. While Nimrod was lost in thought, ULR glanced at him contemptuously. So, you should know by now that your promise is meaningless. You can give me nothing. Leave, and stop bothering me. Nimrod spread his golden wings, I hope so. He didn't want to board the vengeful spirit for any final battle, his goal was to reap benefits during the great birthday celebration. His golden wings flapped, and Nimrod soared into the sky. ULR looked up at the golden speck, which vanished into the horizon in an instant. He shook his head, I thought you would be different. You are indeed different, he didn't get it, but you did. Soldier Patson, you should rest. The mechanical voice of Graft the servitor rang out, he had already stored the flax in the warehouse. ULR withdrew his gaze, shook his neck, which was stiff from looking up for so long today, and laughed self-deprecatingly. The Order shadows of Caucasus Fortress and the big shots of Numinous City would never imagine that their Lord Nimrod actually came for an ordinary soldier. He pushed open the door, walked into the small white painted house, and went to the shower room. ULR pulled a rope, and the gravity shower projected a stream of water onto him. Open black lens bracket Nimrod's urgency to obtain the Dark Tongue must be related to the Council of Nicaea. He banned the librarians, and the Order shadows lost their innate weapons, they were the legion with the largest number of psychers. After Nimrod gets the Dark Tongue, will he offer it to him? Close black lens bracket. The dusty silhouette of his liege flashed in his mind once more. Open black lens bracket. If he knew I was here, would he refrain from punishing me for stabbing him because he obtained the Dark Tongue? Or would he order Nimrod to kill me to punish my betrayal? Send the custodes to bring me back to Terra for punishment. ULR could not be sure of his decision. They had once been close friends who spent days and nights together in long conversations, but they had not seen each other for 30,000 years. Open black lens bracket. Should I leave? Close black lens bracket. While he was thinking, a song suddenly rang out. His wife's singing. He could always hear his wife singing when he showered. ULR dried himself off and got dressed. He walked into the kitchen but didn't see his wife, nor did he see any hot bread. She must have gone to get eggs. ULR sat at the old dining table, waiting for his wife to return. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Grumble. Uller's stomach growled, and he murmured, I forgot, she's long dead, she died before I joined the Imperial Army for the last time. She never settled with me on cause at all, nor did she ever enjoy such a beautiful world. ULR pulled a thin chain from his neck, on which hung a Catholic emblem. It was a gift from one of his wives. She had passed away before they could even get to know each other well. My memories are muddled. I've lived several times, dozens of times. I've lived too many times. I'm too old, and too tired. Ulr put the chain back around his neck, stood up, and poured himself a glass of milk. No matter what happens in the future, I only want to live the life I have now. This is my life. Although the ruler of Kaz is an arrogant bastard just like him, this world is indeed beautiful. Ulr drank the milk in one gulp. I only want to live the life I have now. He put the prepared ingredients into the fully automatic oven. Ulr didn't have his wife's skill for baking bread, he could only rely on mechanical creations. Then, he stepped out the door to get the eggs from the storage room. He liked to put the eggs where his wife used to keep them. 909. You are the last lion beast, and also my first spirit. The northern wilds are Caliban's oldest, most desolate, and most dangerous wilderness region. Now, almost all the forests have disappeared, except for the northeast of the planet, near Wolf Head Mountain where the fallen, Serious Knights, were located, and its surrounding areas where patches of forest still remain. Open black lens bracket. Remember this site's domain name. Look for the super reliable Taiwan novels. Close black lens bracket. Librarian Zahariel of the Dark Angels walked out from the landing pad. The deep gray landing pad was surrounded on three sides by massive multi-story mineral refineries and storage tanks, casting shadows over the fields. Zahariel quickly left the landing pad and looked around, seeing the tops of brown and black tree roots stubbornly pushing through smooth cracks. Caliban's forests had not yielded to the Imperium's ground-clearing machinery, they were still stubbornly resisting and growing. The Imperium's planetary scientists classified Caliban as a death world, meaning it was not only dangerous but a planet actively harmful to human life. Zahariel had read many tomes in the librarium and gradually learned that death worlds were almost impossible to tame. Caliban seemed to have been completely transformed by the Imperium's engineers, but the spirit warlock could feel that it was not so, something was still resisting. As Zahariel moved forward, the trees emerging from the ground grew from calf-high plants to trees 6 people tall. Zahariel walked into the forests of Caliban. The spirit warlock frowned as he looked at the deathly silence covering the green trees, a rustling sound in his ears. Zahariel, you are a child of Caliban. You must stop them. The spirit warlock looked deep into the forest, following the direction where the trees wept and bowed. A moment of glory from many years ago leapt into his mind. He had been nearby when he killed the last lion beast. More importantly, the feeling in his memory was the same as it was now. There was something in the forest, something that even an Astartes could not see. It emitted a slow and disgusting corruption. Zahariel's gaze swept across the buildings and towers, searching for the presence hidden in the shadows. He found that the Caliban beasts like the lion beasts were gone, the distorted and terrifying trees were gone, and even the craters caused by the Order's crusade battles had been scraped bare, yet the atmosphere of this place still remained. The spirit warlock spread his spirituality. Who told you? His voice echoed through the forest through his breathing grill. The forest was silent, and the darkness grew thicker. Zahariel received no answer. The spirit warlock suffused more spirituality and continued to question. The survivor of the Serious Knights, that wraith wandering Caliban, where is he? He could sense that the forest's natural spirits also resisted answering this question, but from the sound of the swaying branches, he could tell the resistance was not as firm as before. After obtaining the power bestowed by the Black Emperor, he had been tracking the last survivor of the Serious Knights for nearly a year. The spirit warlock's tone was gentle and persuasive. We are all nurtured by Caliban, we all stand together. You should tell me. Silence passed second by second, then a deep, hollow voice sounded. He is at roar. Zahariel was startled. This aura was all too familiar to him, it belonged to a lion beast. But the last lion beast had already been killed by him. Lord Luther had always regretted not achieving the same feat. The spirit warlock followed his inspiration and ran toward the direction of the roar. He had only run a kilometer before he stepped out of the forest's range. Zahariel's eyes suddenly narrowed, the ground ahead was covered in a layer of frost. Zahariel looked toward the center of the frost, where a large tree stood, charred black by lightning. The spirit warlock's inspiration was suddenly triggered. In the shadow of the large tree, a massive pitch-black beast came to life like obsidian stone covered in giant spikes. An extinct lion beast. The blade-like mane on its chitinous shell head suddenly exploded and shot out, covering the sky as it struck directly at Zahariel. A piercing howl, full of malice and hatred. The trajectory of every main blade flashed through Zahariel's mind, and he suddenly pulled back. The ear-splitting shriek poured into his ears, and the malicious roar echoed in his mind, as if it wanted to tear his brain and soul apart together. Zahariel immediately ascended to Thelema third-layer state of mind, constructing a golden barrier to isolate the wraith's shriek. The spirit warlock's eyes narrowed. A lion beast's mane could not fly off its body, this was a lion beast wraith. The hatred in its howl exceeded the level of a wraith, it seemed to have an extraordinary grudge against him. It couldn't be the lion beast I once killed, could it? If I could kill you once, I can kill you a second time. Back then, I was just a knight, only able to use my talent by instinct. Now, not only am I a dark angel, but I have also mastered fear vision, under the Black Emperor's guidance and received the power bestowed by my lord. While Zahariel was thinking, he awakened the memory of almost being torn apart by the lion beast's sword-sharp front claws during its lifetime and charged at the wraith beast. 1,000 Zahariels suddenly appeared from all directions. In an instant, 1,000 blades struck the shimmering armor. Bang! The lion beast shattered into tens of thousands of pieces. Whoosh! The lion beast wraith's tens of thousands of fragments converged again. Physical attacks were not very effective against it. The librarian raised his left arm and drew his force staff from his back. Crackle! The force staff was surrounded by streaks of pitch-black flames as it smashed toward the lion beast. After Zahariel became a nightmare, his psychic flames mutated into a unique pitch-black color. Dim stars, pitch black as if they were extinguished suns, shot toward the lion beast wraith. Boom boom boom. The lion beast wraith was blown apart by the pitch-black flames, its body shimmering with an eerie green light as it exploded into fragments. Zahariel stared at the drifting bits of the lion beast wraith as they slowly regrouped. It actually wasn't dead yet. It was slowly recovering. The spirit warlock stared at the powerful wraith, his eyes shining. I once killed you. You are the last lion beast, and also my first spirit. The spirit warlock's breathing gradually became long and steady, and a gray mist rose between his eyes. The spirit warlock spread his spirituality, and countless pitch-black mysterious runes enveloped the lion beast wraith. The drifting specks of eerie green light suddenly surged. A burst of brilliant light shot out, as if trying to break through the black gauze net. The spirit warlock forcefully tapped the third pair of teeth to the right of his front teeth, and the black gauze net suddenly contracted, pressing the eerie green light back down. The pitch-black veil and the eerie green light expanded and contracted continuously, and in the repeated tug of war, they overall tightened inward bit by bit. Suddenly, the eerie green light was completely pressed into the veil wrap, with not a single bit of light leaking out. The spirit warlock again tapped the third pair of teeth to the right of his front teeth, and the pitch-black veil turned into a streak of light, plunging into his mouth. The light vanished, and a mysterious symbol was faintly branded onto one of Spirit Warlock Zahariel's lower teeth in the third pair to the right. In his mind, a figure suddenly rushed in, wearing a wolf head mask. On both sides of the mask were open wings, extending to wrap around the back of the head. Sirius. The first wraith he harvested brought him the location of the last survivor. 910. I can influence 1/3 of the Dark Angels. After obtaining information from the Lion Beast Wraith, Spirit Warlock, Zahariel headed all the way north. After walking 6.1 kilometers, he suddenly stopped and gazed at a pattern carved into an ancient tree, a giant wolf in flight. The Spirit Warlock leaned against the tree and lightly tapped the third pair of teeth to the right of his front teeth. Mystic runes rose, gray mist filled the air, and the Lion Beast Wraith emerged from thin air. Its body glowed with a faint green light and appeared somewhat illusory, as if it might vanish at any moment. The Spirit Warlock stared into the giant, glimmering eyes. Protect me. The Lion Beast Wraith raised its sharp claws and struck the ground silently. A ghostly cold aura spread, and several trees were coated in frost. Zahariel's head rested gently against the tree as his eyelids drooped. His breathing became long and steady as he safely entered the gray world. In the past, he always had reservations when using his nightmare ability. On the battlefield, while dealing with some enemies, he had to be wary of physical attacks. After forcibly pulling someone into a dream, he also needed others to attack the dreaming, immobile enemies. Now, with his own spirit, he had more tactical options and greater flexibility. The Spirit Warlock stepped forward, the gray mist expanded with his movement but always covered the area around him with a radius of 630 meters. When he was a veteran, Soul Assurer, the radius was 400 meters. When he first became a Spirit Warlock, the range was 520 meters. As the Spirit Warlock moved, the surrounding trees became exceptionally dim and took on a slight haziness. Suddenly, Zahariel stopped. He sensed a figure at the edge of the gray mist. A black robe covered his light gray armor, and the silver fur of the horse he rode shimmered. The spirit warlock took a step forward, and the gray mist swallowed the serious knight. He shuddered and looked around. Something seemed to have become hazy. His brow furrowed, and just as he was about to investigate further, his eyelids became heavy, and he slowly slumped over his horse. In the haze, he suddenly saw a knight in gray armor walking toward him. Just as he was about to draw the blade at his waist, his hand froze. Philos, you're still alive. Of course. In the nightmare world, spirit warlock, Zahariel skillfully took on the appearance of the corpse he had found in the tower. Do you remember what happened when our fortress was breached? A cold, hateful light flickered in the eyes of the muddled serious knight. Of course I remember. Lionel Johnson. He broke through our lines from the flank of Wolfhead Mountain. He cut down one knight after another with his sword. His fury destroyed the beasts we had contained. At that time, I was in the library leafing through an ancient book when he suddenly burst in. A hint of fear mingled with the serious knight's hateful tone. We fought back with all our might, but he ruthlessly took the lives of over 100 knights with his blade. We were forced to use pillars and corners to resist the attack. Finally, I was knocked flying. I saw the fortress fall and knew the order was about to be destroyed. I fled, not for my life, but for revenge. Open black lens bracket. The library, close black lens bracket. Zahariel's heart shook. The library of the serious knights was even larger than the one in Alderuk. It was the largest library on Caliban before the Emperor arrived. What was Lionel Johnson doing? He ordered his squires to seal the books and take them back in secret. Open black lens bracket. Not just Luther, but the lion also took books from the serious knights, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. The library was vast, and the situation was chaotic at the time. No one knew he had also secretly taken a batch, close black lens bracket. What did you see there? Spirit warlock, Zahariel pressed. Eckhart's handwritten manuscripts, which recorded our ancestors' research on the beasts and the northern wilds themselves. Although he didn't fully understand everything, he could summon and control powerful forces through rituals. He said any purging of the beasts was futile. The power hidden deep within Caliban would never be extinct, just as the forest will not be entirely consumed by wildfire. Zahariel was stunned. If Lionel Johnson had truly read those books, he should have known that the Great Crusade against the beasts was not over. Open black lens bracket. He replaced our crusade with the Emperor's Great Crusade, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. He knew Caliban was still in terrible danger, yet he chose to ignore it, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. He abandoned us and chose to lead the Emperor's Great Crusade, close black lens bracket. Zahariel felt a stabbing pain in his heart. Open black lens bracket. Fortunately, Lord Luther was wise and found another way for Caliban, close black lens bracket. The spirit warlock calmed his thoughts. Tell me the process of the summoning ritual. With a heavy heart, Zahariel stepped back into the stone fortress, Alderuk. He entered Lord Luther's office, activated the Euclidean rune, and detailed the results of his investigation. Luther clenched his fists and then slowly released them. My lord had already ordered the texts of the serious knights to be sacrificed to him. He must have anticipated the current situation. Zahariel nodded, and the two went to the secret room together, kneeling piously before the obsidian altar to pray to the Black Emperor. By their fourth prayer, black mist rose abruptly, surrounding the two. My lord. Luther and Zahariel knelt together in the black mist, looking up at the majestic figure on the throne. The burden of Caliban's safety weighing on their hearts eased slightly. Luther collected his thoughts and reported to the Black Emperor first. My lord, I am leading the recruitment for the Dark Angels. Every training cycle sees a steady growth of 21%. I have expanded the scale of the training content 3 times in a row to cultivate even better subsequent candidates. The apothecaries report that the new screening model has significantly reduced organ rejection incidents among candidates. In the past 5 training cycles, there hasn't been a single report of death. They believe this situation will continue indefinitely. Luther took out a data slate and held it up respectfully. My lord, the new screening model has finally determined that 24 months is the optimal training time. Any less would reduce the physical fitness of the recruits. I have also figured out a way to integrate the implantation surgeries into the training regimen. This is why the recruitment scale can grow steadily each training cycle. With a thought from Nimrod, the data slate fell into his palm. Although Luther's recruitment growth rate was only 1% higher than in his memory, considering the time spent corroding the gene seed in the 6th layer of the nation of disorder, steady growth was commendable. The screening model Luther reformed was completed 3 training cycles earlier than he remembered. Open black lens bracket without Luther, given the Lion's brutal method of waging a holy war against Xenos across the galaxy, it would be impossible for the Dark Angels to have a scale of 200,000 now. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Luther's comprehensive ability is definitely the best below a Primarch. His recruitment capability is too excellent. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. The Lion didn't actually choose the wrong person, it's just that Luther was confined to internal affairs and couldn't exercise his command abilities. Close black lens bracket. Nimrod's mind raced, quickly calculating the number of Dark Angel recruits Luther had trained based on past data. 63,520 men. Open black lens bracket. The number of gene seeds corroded, was 64,970. Luther made full use of them. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Even with the Lion's brutal methods, at least 40,000 are still in service. They will all subconsciously lean toward me. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Add to that the 29,000 Terra-born controlled by Urian Bendrag, and I can potentially influence nearly 70,000, which is 1/3 of the Dark Angels. Close black lens bracket. As he pondered, Luther continued his report. Besides supplying the expeditionary fleet, I have also reserved 18 million bolt rounds and 2,400 chainswords from the output of the Caliban factories. 8 regiments of Caliban Jaegers will complete their training within 5 months. The armored vehicles produced by the mechanical workshops are expected to arm 4 new Caliban Hussar regiments within 3 months. The Caliban Jaegers were auxilia from Caliban. Although not as distinguished as the Chthonian Headhunters or the Mordian Iron Guard, under Nimrod, they were well equipped and had decent combat power. Caliban Hussars was the title held by Caliban Jaegers who specialized in armored warfare. Good. Your performance is impressive, Nimrod said, his gaze then turning towards Zahariel. 911. When the Empire came to Caliban, it was destined for destruction. After hearing Zahariel's report, Nimrod leaned back against his throne. Open black lens bracket. It is time to guide Zahariel to make early contact with the Dark Watchers. Close black lens bracket. The records of the Serious Knights are indeed correct. Caliban has always been subject to the corrosion of the power of chaos. With a thought, Nimrod sent some common knowledge they both needed to them via a thought pulse. Warp, chaos, eye of terror, Caliban. Both Luther and Zahariel shuddered. The great beast quest had never achieved victory, and victory was, in fact, impossible. Chaos taint had always existed and was difficult to eradicate. They glanced at each other, their mutual concern dimly visible through the hazy black mist. Luther and Zahariel looked up in unison at Nimrod, who sat high upon his throne. On Caliban, there are other creatures who recognized the threat of chaos long ago and have been fighting against them. Zahariel, they are no strangers to you, you once swore to use your sword to punish evil on their behalf. Zahariel was startled. At that time, he had not yet met the Black Emperor, and the oath was one he had taken when he became a knight. Open black lens bracket. My lord is the Black Emperor, naturally, he would know. Close black lens bracket. According to your will. The black mist engulfed Luther and Zahariel, and they returned to Alderuk. Luther and Zahariel clasped their hands together, holding their swords inverted, and prayed to the Black Emperor for a moment before leaving the altar. Zahariel then left Alderuk and went into the wilderness alone. The cold wind howled, but Zahariel did not hesitate. The librarian took a deep breath, concentrated, and let out a shout filled with psychic power. Come out. I know you have been watching in the darkness. I once swore to you that I would use my sword to punish evil on your behalf. Now I have seen the truth. This world is corrupted, and my people are in extreme danger. Blue and white lightning crackled, exploding in front of Zahariel. The color of the electric glow deepened, gradually turning silver, shining like moonlight. 3 figures appeared amidst a howling whirlwind, wearing strange robes whose colors shifted from black to brown, then to gray, and finally back to black. None of them were more than a meter tall, but the librarian could feel their surging psychic power. Their heads were completely shrouded under hoods, their faces hidden by darkness. Their hands were hidden within the sleeves of their hoods, no flesh visible. Zahariel stared at the 3 figures. You are not ghosts, nor are you people of the forest. You are an alien species. The one in the center stepped forward and spoke, we are the Watchers. His voice was like a series of complex whispers woven together. Watchers, Zahariel repeated. You have been guarding Caliban for hundreds, even thousands of years. Now that disaster is imminent, as Watchers, you should bear more responsibility for everything that is happening, just as we do. The Watchers did not answer. The librarian felt ripples in the ether tides, they were communicating in a mysterious way. As the minutes and seconds ticked by, the ether tides gradually calmed. We will provide you with help. Whatever you wish to know, we will answer your questions. Zahariel was somewhat disappointed to hear that the Watchers did not seem to confront chaos directly. Open black lens bracket. Since the Black Emperor commanded me, the Watchers must have a role to play. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Furthermore, they have fought the evil of Caliban for many years, perhaps they know some secrets. Close black lens bracket. Thinking of this, he asked, how long has Caliban been infested by this evil? A long time ago, even before you humans arrived here, the Watcher on the right said coldly. Why did no Calibanite succumb to corruption before? Zahariel pressed. Because of our efforts, the Watcher on the right said with a tone of arrogance. The Watcher on the left spoke. The great beasts were born of the taint and can only move around the contaminated areas. They killed almost everyone who strayed too close. The few survivors were eventually killed as sorcerers by your people before they became too powerful. He nodded, thinking of the records in the Serious Knight's library. The Watchers were referring to the authors of those forbidden books. Ironically, this situation would have continued indefinitely until the arrival of the Empire. They cut down the forests and forced their way into the most uninhabitable regions of Caliban, seeking resources to feed the Empire's war robot. Zahariel had a sudden realization. The thermal cores. You mean the engineers who came with the Emperor buried thermal cores underground, releasing the taint of the northern wilds. Luther's words echoed in his mind again. Neither the Emperor nor Lion are of Caliban. They do not care about the survival of our world. Those outsiders, they nourish evil with fire and slaughter, the Watcher on the right said coldly. Zahariel knew he was referring to the Terra-born Dark Angels, who had been exiled to Caliban by Lion. Some of them were full of resentment toward the Empire and the Primarch. Urian has been hunting them, but some forces interfering with them. Besides Graphax, over 1,000 Terra-born Dark Angels had gone missing, moving within the shadows. Even Urian would occasionally discover new fallen among the Terra-born. The Watcher in the middle spoke, the power of evil. It is already too late. They have gone deep into the 2,000 hive cities established by the Empire, using tens of millions of Calibanite laborers as sacrifices to increase the power of the ritual. Terrible energy is accumulating in secret. Once released, no one will be able to stop it. His voice betrayed sadness. When the Empire entered Caliban and destroyed the forests, Caliban's destruction was already destined. There is nothing you can do to stop it. You are wrong, Zahariel of the Dark Angels, he replied, his ghostly voice low, as if saturated. Caliban is doomed, there is nothing you can do to stop it. Thunder exploded in Zahariel's mind as everything began to click together. Lion had read the records of the Serious Knights and learned the source of the Northern Wilds, taint. He had abandoned the Great Beast quest because he knew it could not be eradicated. He chose to accept the policies of the Emperor and the Empire, extensively developing Caliban and draining its last bits of value to power the Empire's even greater Great Crusade. He was allowing the destruction of Caliban to happen. Zahariel's heart was heavy, yet he felt incredibly fortunate. Open black lens bracket. Luther led us to find new hope. The Black Emperor is the hope of Caliban. Close black lens bracket. Not a trace of illusion regarding Lion remained in Zahariel's heart. He held his head high. Caliban shall never be destroyed. Hope still remains. The Watcher on the right sneered coldly, ridiculous confidence. Bang! The electric glow erupted and then suddenly vanished. The Watchers disappeared into the darkness. Zahariel immediately returned to the fortress of Alderuk and went to Luther's office to report to him. After listening to Zahariel's report, Luther pondered for a moment before making a decision. Maesterlin has secretly joined us. We can use him to lure the Terra-born out. 912. I will control 1/9 of the 1,000 suns, but also resolve their flesh change. 004. M31. Ultima Segmentum, Prospero, Tisca, the City of Light. The colossal pyramids of the 5 great schools of the 1,000 suns stood on the white guardian mountain of Tisca, their magnificent architecture perfectly integrated with the surrounding environment. Only the Fire Phoenix School's pyramid was an exception. Its fiercely burning spire and the Shinakli-controlled mechanisms at its entrance were incongruous with everything else. The Bright Feather School's pyramid was exquisitely beautiful, perfectly reflecting the chief librarian's authority in every detail. Every marble block of the main structure, the inlaid sparkling crystals, and the brilliant gemstones were perfectly cut, meticulously carved, and flawlessly fitted together. Inside the Bright Feather Pyramid, Hather Mat, the chief librarian of the 1,000 Suns, lay on a red maplewood bed. A psionic drake flapped its wings, chasing the guardian spirit Peok, which shone like a million stars. Hather used psychological suggestion on himself, and he quickly fell into a dream. In a hazy atmosphere, Hather Mat, the dreamwalker, awoke. He found himself in an amphitheater, where a figure on a high platform radiated brilliant golden light. I command all legions to abolish their librarium departments. All librarians are to immediately return to their combat companies and are forbidden from ever again using any psionic power. Hather sneered. Neither the Black Emperor nor the Gene Father cared about the false emperor's prohibition. He raised his arms, and his white arms rapidly became lustrous. Crackling, thunder and lightning struck the high platform out of nowhere. Boom! The golden light was torn apart, and the high platform exploded. Hather walked past the edge of his dream, stepping into the depths of the gray mist. The Dreamwalker raised his arm, pointing it at the mist. The mist churned and rolled, revealing layers of descending steps. The Dreamwalker stepped down, entering the collective subconscious ocean of Prospero, where points of light lit up all around him. Two towering figures suddenly appeared, one a scarlet giant, the other a massive figure in black armor with golden wings. Hather knelt before the Black Emperor. After rising, he critically observed the two giant figures formed by subconscious worship. The Gene Father is twice the size of my lord, the Thousand Sons still worship their father more. Well, this is also related to the fact that most of the members of the Second Fellowship in the schools I hypnotized have been dispatched to Alexandria IV. The Dreamwalker extended his spirituality, probing into the towering Black Emperor's phantom. The phantom was mixed with various other phantoms of different colors, the most numerous being golden scarabs, numbering 110. The chief librarian had, through effort, expanded them from 81 to 110. They were all psionic masters among the Thousand Sons, each having mastered at least the 8th level of mental state. The Dreamwalker Hather passed over phantoms of splendid colorful feathers, blazing flames, and dark ravens, finally settling on a water snake. The water snake's body was branded with countless mysterious symbols and celestial bodies, and a torrent of data flowed within it. This was the dream of Ignis, the master of destruction and leader of the cult of destruction. The Dreamwalker raised his arm, and spirituality burst from his palm, striking the water snake's skin. The mysterious symbols and shining celestial bodies shifted, revealing the inside of the water snake's body. The Dreamwalker's hand reached into the body, and the torrent of data surged and rolled, sliding past his arm. Outside the pyramids of the 5 great schools, the cult of destruction's pyramid, only 1% the size of the others, resembled a coiled water snake. The destruction pyramid's construction took the cult's emblem, a poised water snake, as the basis for its main structural design. It was engraved with countless mysterious symbols and abstract celestial symbols. The cult of destruction was a mystical order, exploring divination and the mysteries of the universe. Each member of the cult was an actuary, a logician, an analyst, and a highly capable organizer. They were responsible for preparing logistics, formulating operational plans, and managing and maintaining the Legion's warships within the Thousand Sons Legion. A golden gleam silently seeped from Ignis's dream, leaping into the astral body, the mind, filled with numbers. The mental state was a field specialized by the Thousand Sons Masters, and the Master of Destruction could simultaneously extend it from the 1st to the 9th layer, achieving terrifying data computation capabilities. He would have immediately detected the outsider infiltrating his mind, but Hather had already subtly infected him through more than a century of psychological suggestion. However, the Dreamwalker still needed to reinforce the effect of the psychological suggestion by modifying dreams, originated from dream manipulation, which was softer, more concealed, and harder to detect than psychological suggestion, making it suitable for strong-willed targets. A golden gleam silently seeped inward along the astral body, quietly merging into the golden orb that enveloped the spiritual body, the soul. The last gap in the golden orb was filled, completely enclosing the spiritual body. The Dreamwalker felt that Ignis's spiritual body was completely infected, and his actions became bolder. He injected more spirituality, and the golden orb emitted a circle of golden light, rapidly expanding, crossing the astral body, and reacting to the mental body, the brain. The Dreamwalker's thoughts flickered. My loyalty to Hather Mat is as solid as a rock, surpassing my loyalty to the Gene Father Magnus. Lord Nimrod is more worthy of pursuit than father. The Dreamwalker's thoughts repeated, embedding themselves in Ignis's subconscious over and over again. After the Dreamwalker reinforced Ignis's loyalty and worship of the Black Emperor through. He stepped onto the stairs, returning from the collective subconscious ocean to his own dream. After Hather opened his eyes, he rose from the red maplewood bed. He picked up his force sword from the weapon rack, left the bedroom, and entered the meditation room. The Dreamwalker injected spirituality into the sword hilt, quickly tapping it on the geometric pattern on the floor. Ah! As the Euclidean rune was completed, Yuspa's light suddenly extinguished. The biochemical psyker felt his connection to the etheric tides severed, so he laid down his blade and knelt in devotion. Due to Yuspa's presence, Hather had not built an altar to the Black Emperor within the Bright Feather Pyramid. But he was a favored one, and the Black Emperor would answer his prayers. As Hather recited for the third time, black mist surged forth, engulfing his body. He knelt in the black mist, looking up at the throne with reverence, and began to report. My lord, I have followed your command, persuaded Father to agree, and dispatched forces to Alexandria IV to guard our most brilliant achievement since departing Prospero. A total of 12,500 sons will depart tomorrow, of which 9,400 are warriors from my third fellowship. 1,800 members of the Falcon School from Phocis Takar's second fellowship will join the defensive system construction. Nimrod nodded slightly. Because he had initiated the Arc-Edge cluster campaign in advance, the Thousand Sons had not suffered significant casualties in the war against the Aven, and their total strength was now slightly more than the original 85,000, approaching 90,000. Open black lens bracket. The cult of destruction is basically under control. Among the 12,000 people, most are Hather's trusted subordinates whom he has. Coupled with the Scarab Terminators and other forces around Hather, I can conservatively estimate that I will control 10,000 people, which is 1/9 of the Thousand Sons. Close black lens bracket. You've done well, Nimrod said approvingly. After sending Hather back to the real world, he leaned back on his throne. I will control 1/9 of the Thousand Sons, but I also need to find a way to resolve their flesh change. 913. The Warmaster has fallen. Davin's official number in the Imperial Archives is 63 to 19, representing the 19th world brought into compliance by the 63rd Expeditionary Fleet. The tribal warriors of this world were crushed within hours when faced with the assault of the Luna Wolves Legion. After the battle, Horus continued to lead the fleet's expedition, leaving the reconstruction of Davin to his mortal friend, Eugen Temba, while the task of spreading the imperial truth was assigned to the word-bearer's first captain, Corferin. After the Luna Wolves were renamed the Sons of Horus, Horus was shocked to receive a report from the word-bearer's first chaplain, Erebus, stating that Governor Temba had actually betrayed the Empire and launched a rebellion. The Warmaster could not allow rebellion to tarnish his glory, and in his fury, he personally led a team for an orbital drop. The Sons of Horus waded through viscous sludge and foul-smelling sewage. Even the transcendent vision of the Astartes could not see beyond 100 meters. In the thick fog, a massive, bloated body suddenly rose from the swamp, lunging at Garville Loken, the captain of the 10th Company. A single gray-green eye beneath the yellowed horns of the rotting, decayed body stared intently at Loken, its fang-filled maw opening to let out a bizarre laugh. He raised a slimy arm to grab at the power armor, but Loken swung his sword with a sudden strike, the blade hitting the bloated body as if striking a thick meat shield. With a flicker of thought amidst his loathing, Loken's combat stims accelerated his metabolism. Bang! Moldy flesh exploded, spraying putrid fluid and pus that splattered across the Mark IV power armor. Boom! 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 The warriors of the 10th Company raised their bolters, their fierce firepower tearing the decaying limbs to shreds, yet the abominations continued to advance. Heads! Loken shouted a reminder as he raised his hand to fire a bolt, blasting a decaying skull into charred bone fragments. The 10th Company warriors immediately followed their captain's command, blowing the heads of the staggering green monsters into splashing slime. Splat! Splat! One by one, the green monsters fell dead into the swamp water and dissolved instantly, overflowing with foul-smelling, viscous liquid as if melting. He saw more abominations constantly emerging from the swamp, reaching out with sickly, yellowish claws to attack. A dense swarm of flies circled around with a rumbling hum, static interference filled the communication channels, and a wet, slippery voice repeated over and over, "Praise the Father of Plagues, he is the Lord of Decay." A stout flying insect lunged and flapped against one of the Sons of Horus, stuffing itself into the breathing grill. The Son of Horus frantically tore off his helmet, the flesh across his entire body rotted and decayed at a supernatural rate, his skin turning gray and peeling off as necrotic fluid filled his armor. Loken kept swinging his chainsword, repeating simple, monotonous slashes. He felt his arms growing heavier, the toothed blade filled with viscous liquid and rotten meat. Realizing he could not continue like this, Loken kept switching communication channels, trying to contact friendly forces, but the wet, slimy voice filled them all. "Praise the Lord of Decay." A clear, bright voice suddenly cut into all channels. "This is the Warmaster, all Sons of Horus. Assemble at this signal." A surge of fresh strength poured into the bodies of the Sons of Horus. They immediately assembled and moved toward the signal marked by the positioning rune. The source of the communication signal was rooted in the heart of the fog-shrouded swamp, where the Glory of Terra, Temba's flagship that crashed during the Compliance War, stood like a mountain of steel. Rust saturated the Gothic spires, and the steel hull was draped in a spider web-like tangle of decaying vines. Hastur Cyanus, captain of the Sons of Horus's 4th Company, said to the Warmaster as he strode toward the ship's wreckage, "You should not be leading the spearhead force personally, the members of the Council of 4 Kings can do that for you." Erebus, the first chaplain of the word-bearers, looked at Sejanus with a somber expression. The captain's sudden intervention had affected his plans. Horus Lupercal let out a light laugh. "It has been far, far too long since I have taken a blade onto the battlefield. If I had known I would be forced to stay away from the battlefield, I certainly would have refused the title of Warmaster." Horus thought of Nimrod beheading the leader of the Blind King and being the first to break into the heart of the giant spider monsters on Murder Planet, which only strengthened his conviction. "Erebus, lead your warriors around to the opposite side of the ruins and join me in a pincer attack on the traitor." Erebus gripped his scepter of truth and bowed with a smile. "As you command, my Warmaster." Horus then looked at the members of the Council of 4 Kings and issued his orders. "Ezekiel, establish a defensive line on the left flank. Little Horus, you take the right. Hastur and Tariq, clear this area and guard our rear. I have a traitor to kill. Move out." Horus led his team into the internal chambers of the Glory of Terra's wreckage, walking through distorted corridors with severely deformed bulkheads. A foul wind creaked through the hallways, and black mold spread everywhere. Rumble. Amidst a deafening roar, a massive tremor struck Horus's heels. The Glory of Terra tilted further into the swamp, mud erupting into the sky like a fountain as the steel wreckage began to capsize. Horus easily maintained his balance amidst the violent shaking, but many sons of Horus tumbled and fell, scattered in all directions. He drew his golden blade, his iron-gray eyes swept over the shimmering edge, which seemed to contain a raging fire. It was forged by his brother, Ferus Manus, as a precious gift to commemorate his appointment as Warmaster. Horus was quite surprised when he received the gift. Manus had once been considered a candidate for Warmaster, and he still had a good relationship with Nimrod, though not as close as with Fulgrim. It was friendly enough. Manus did not feel slighted for himself or Nimrod and accepted their father's choice. Horus held the golden blade high, its bright light dispelling the thick, putrid mist. After identifying his direction, he headed toward the main thoroughfare of the Glory of Terra. The unnatural tilt and constant swaying did not slow his pace in the slightest as he strode forward. Clang, clang, decaying hatches swung and rattled, opening and closing incessantly. In a low hum, a bloated green figure staggered toward Horus. Horus swung his blade, sweeping through the enemy ranks like a fiery meteor as he broke into the bridge. He looked out to see mold-covered banners hanging high from the ceiling. Numerous corpses had been sewn into the tattered fabric by horrific means, all of them wearing the wolf-gray uniforms of the 63rd Expeditionary Fleet. "My friends, I will avenge you," he promised loudly, charging into the depths of the bridge. "Praise the Father of Plagues, he is the Lord of Decay," the slimy voice repeated in a low, murmuring whisper. Following the source of the voice, Horus saw a bloated, swollen figure holding a blade that shimmered as clear as a diamond in one hand. A few scraps of cloth hung from the gray-green body, with glowing golden epaulets and silver snap fasteners pinned directly to the fat. Temba. Horus walked toward his former friend, the governor he had appointed. "Warmaster." Temba clutched the infected wound on his chest. "Do not dare call me by that title, you abominable monster." Temba tilted his head and hissed, "Abominable monster. You are not Temba, you are a filth spawned by the warp," Horus roared. "I am Temba, the so-called friend you left behind." Every word Temba spat was sluggish and slimy, as if emerging from a swamp. "I am Temba, the loyal servant of Horus. While you chased glory among the stars, I was thrown into this remote corner. Despite this, old friend, I am still willing to share the power of the warp with you. It is truly wonderful." Horus stepped up the dais, closing in on Temba. "Primal, pure, uncontrollable power is not to be trusted." Temba shook his head. "You have only seen a part of it. It contains life, and is filled with ambition and desire. It will help you rule over all things and reign over the world. The galaxy already has a master, and he is the Emperor," Horus shouted. "And where is he? He destroys anyone who defies his will, and now he has dumped this mess on you," Temba sneered. "What kind of leader is he? He is nothing but a tyrant." Horus reached the top of the platform and raised his golden blade. "All events in galactic history do not happen randomly, but follow a deep thread of destiny, chaos. Quote, chaos is the primordial force of the universe's creation, and it will be the force of its extinction. Old friend, I can see your ambition in your eyes. You only need to accept chaos, and you can. I have no interest." Horus thrust his longsword into Temba's chest. The golden blade forged by Manus easily pierced through the layers of fat and into the traitor's heart. Horus pulled back the blade, bringing with it foul-smelling pus. Temba laughed loudly, completely ignoring the fatal injury to his mortal body as he raised a blade covered in runes. His blue-black lips hissed, "Warmaster Horus." The blade spun and thrust toward Horus's throat, a position he used to have to leap to reach. The swift blade flew at Horus, who quickly raised his own blade to parry the attack. Clang, clang, clang. Temba's assault was fierce. Despite his bloated body, his movements were supernaturally swift and agile. Horus was forced to parry and block, unable to understand how Temba, who had never been an outstanding swordsman, could possess such superb swordsmanship. He took a step back, his right foot landing on the steps. Horus suddenly ducked to avoid a slash, his golden blade slicing across Temba's belly. Viscous, foul blood mixed with stinking fat sprayed onto the deck. Clang! The diamond blade tore off Horus's pauldron. Horus spun his body, constantly thrusting his blade. Temba's swollen body was blasted into pools of pus, revealing sickly, tangled entrails. A brutal and hungry light rose from the cursed blade, its alien edge trembling slightly as if it couldn't wait to drink Horus's flesh and blood. Horus continued to retreat, luring Temba forward, taking the opportunity to swing his golden blade from a low angle, cutting into the swollen ankle. Crack, crack. Two crisp snaps rang out as Temba's ankles gave way, no longer able to support his bloated frame, broken bones piercing through the flesh. Horus raised his sword, intending to use his weapon to entangle Temba's blade. The cursed blade suddenly twisted on its own in midair, stabbing toward Horus's exposed shoulder. Both swords hit their mark simultaneously. The golden blade crushed Temba's heart. The cursed blade pierced into Horus's chest. Horus let out a muffled groan, the shimmering blade made his entire arm feel as if it were being scorched. Horus gritted his teeth, and with a surge of strength in his wrist, he violently tore through Temba's body. Bang! The bloated body collapsed onto Horus, he dropped his golden blade and caught his departed friend, Temba. He picked up the bloated corpse, blood dripping from his shoulder, but he seemed completely unaware of it. Horus sorrowfully carried Temba's body, stepping down from the platform one pace at a time. "Father." Sejanus hurried over, looking worriedly at the blood spilling from Horus's arm as he quickly reached him. He held out his hands and took the corpse. From the contact with his arm, Sejanus felt the weakness in his father's body, he was trembling incessantly. Thud, thud, thud. Footsteps rang out as Abaddon, Torgadon, and Asimandamon hurried over. Abaddon and Asimandamon approached Horus from both sides, attempting to support their father. "I will walk out on my own." Horus's voice was weak and low. Horus walked out of the glory of Terra's wreckage with heavy steps. Just before taking the final step out, he straightened his body and quickened his pace. Thud! His combat boot struck the ground. The apothecaries saw the flowing blood and immediately rushed over. The sons of Horus looked at their father with concern. Horus forced a smile, and just as he was about to speak, he suddenly felt his legs go weak. Boom! The Warmaster's eyes rolled back, and he collapsed to the ground. The sons of Horus watched in horror as their father, the great Lupercal, the Warmaster of the Empire, fell. Erebus witnessed Horus's fall, the corner of his mouth curling up imperceptibly. Greater than 914, Lord of Change, Sejanus should have died. Change. In the Apothecarion of the Vengeful Spirit, flagship of the sons of Horus, the members of the Council of Four Kings, Ezekiel Abaddon, Tariq Torgadon, Hastur Cyanus, and Horus Asimandamon, stood by with the anxious agitation of expectant fathers, watching the apothecaries struggle to save a life. Vardon had been an apothecary for many years, yet he had never felt as panicked or desperate as he did now. The father lay on a gurney, saline solution hydrating his body and stabilizing his blood pressure. Medical servitors brought bag after bag of fresh blood. Another apothecary, Rogan, kept his eyes fixed on the electrocardiograph. Blood pressure is dropping rapidly, heart rate is soaring. Cardiac arrest is imminent. He's still not clotting. Get me more Luraman cells and set up another IV line. Vardon shouted loudly. Narthecium surgical tools descended from the ceiling as usual, numerous ticking mechanical arms operating under Vardon's commands. Luraman cells were injected into Horus's shoulder, immediately slowing the blood loss, but the blood still failed to clot completely. Rogan breathed a sigh of relief. Heart rate is slowing, blood pressure is recovering. Why hasn't he woken up yet? Abaddon demanded. The damage to his shoulder appears minor, yet it is unhealable, Vardon explained. More critically, we don't know enough about him. We don't have enough understanding of his physiology and bodily functions. I can't even be certain what kind of injury triggered this critical state. The wound on his shoulder refuses to clot, bleeding incessantly. I found some residual substances in the wound, perhaps some kind of toxin. Could it be a bacterial or viral infection? Torgadon asked. The swamps of the Daven Moon are heavily contaminated. Vardon shook his head. No, it's not that simple. Father's body is immune to such issues. Then what is it? I don't want to hear any more of your evasions. Abaddon roared, his armor vibrating incessantly. He is Lupercal, he is the War Master, he must wake up. I suspect it's anemic hypoxia caused by a specific toxin. Once it enters the bloodstream, it competes with oxygen and is absorbed manifold by red blood cells. The War Master's metabolism is incredibly efficient, so the toxin has spread to every system in his body, damaging his tissue cells and making it impossible for him to properly utilize the subnormal blood oxygen levels. Sejanus furrowed his brow, struggling to maintain his composure. Didn't you say Father was immune? Indeed, but this toxin seems specifically designed to murder Father. It possesses a perfect genetic disguise, capable of deceiving his formidable physiological defenses to cause maximum damage. In short, this toxin is a Primarch killer. To hell with your killer. Abaddon roared. He grabbed Vardon and slammed him against the wall of the operating room. Silver trays clattered to the floor, as hemostats, blades, and bone saws crashed onto the tiles. I will not allow him to die. Abaddon snarled. If he dies, I'll have your life. You're not helping. Sejanus shouted to stop him. He and Asemendaman stepped forward, grabbing Abaddon's arms and forcefully pushing him toward the operating room door. Boom! Abaddon threw a punch, shattering the head of a training servitor and breaking its shoulder along with it. Asemendaman looked at the training cage. In 20 minutes, Abaddon had destroyed his fourth training servitor. Abaddon had always used his fists to vent anxiety. Killing was the first captain's duty, and it had gradually become his way of life. He gave a bitter smile as he disassembled and reassembled his bolter for the 7th time. Asemendaman completed the assembly of all parts methodically. He was more accustomed to gauging his mood through familiar daily routines. Ever since he abandoned us at Ullinar, everything has changed, Abaddon shouted growlingly. He walked away, leaving us to clean up the mess. Is some damn project on Terra more important than us? He grabbed the wire mesh, ripped it away with a sudden jerk, and hurled it across the training hall. Bang! The wire mesh hit the ground, sliding several meters before coming to rest in front of a pair of slate-gray combat boots. Asemendaman wiped his bolter with an oilcloth. Erebus, how long have you been there? Long enough. Erebus, the first chaplain of the Word-Bearers, stepped out from the shadows. The apothecaries are already at their wits' end regarding the Warmaster's injury. If we don't act immediately, all is lost. Abaddon lunged out of the training cage and rushed up to Erebus. You have a way. The tribes of Davin, Erebus spoke. What do they have? Asemendaman pressed. During Davin's compliance, I personally studied their lodges and behaviors, striving to find signs of corruption or religious folly. I found no moon that violated the imperial truth, but what I discovered within the temple of the Serpent Lodge is the only hope for saving the Warmaster. The furious Abaddon and the worried Asemendaman were captured by Erebus's words. His oratorical skills far surpassed most imperial iterators, with a masterful control over pitch and tone. Their priests specialize in the mystic arts of healing and curing. Sounds like sorcery, Asemendaman said skeptically. What I saw was not so. Erebus was halfway through his sentence when another voice suddenly rang out. We must take the risk. We cannot let the Warmaster die for the sake of so-called purity. Malahurst walked over. 10 minutes later, the Primarch's attendant, the members of the Council of Four Kings, and Erebus gathered again outside the Apothecarian. Sejanus shook his head vigorously after hearing Erebus's words. No, we must never touch profane magic. Abaddon took a step forward, his Terminator armor completely eclipsing Sejanus's frame. Sejanus, don't be so self-righteous. We have no choice. Sejanus held his head high without fear, staring at the first captain. No, I do not agree. There must be another way. I agree with Sejanus, Torgadon said, stepping to his side. There are some red lines that cannot be crossed. Beyond the veil, in the impossible fortress of the Imperium. Sejanus should have died. Change. A face growing from the Lord of Change's right arm repeated in a low voice, Sejanus did not die. Change. Sejanus, Erebus. The face on its right arm vanished, and a face grew from its waist, Sejanus, Erebus. As Tzeentch's eyes blinked in and out of existence, new threads of fate were woven. A new plan, new changes, everything is within my grasp. The face growing from Tzeentch's left leg spoke with delight, a new plan, new changes, everything is within my grasp. Aboard the vengeful spirit, the dark apostle Erebus suddenly felt his eyelids grow heavy, and in a trance, he fell into a deep sleep. A moment later, he slowly woke up, his eyes shining brightly. Erebus immediately left his quarters and found the members of the Council of Four Kings. I want to understand the source of the toxin. It might help us treat the Warmaster. Sejanus's eyes lit up. Yes, I will head to the surface of Davin immediately to find the weapon that harmed father. I know Davin well. I will go with you, Erebus said helpfully. The Stormbird slowly descended, and Sejanus stepped off the deck along with Erebus. Sejanus walked briskly, observing the surroundings. Only 19 hours had passed since he last set foot on Davin, yet the place had undergone a massive transformation. The thick mist had dissipated, and the sky had changed from a murky yellow to a bright, pale hue. The stench had also significantly lessened, but the diseased trees had all withered and died. Glory of Terra. Sejanus once again boarded the wreckage of the decayed rebel leader Eugen Temba's flagship. He and Erebus walked side by side, moving quickly through the foul-smelling, dark corridors toward the bridge. Sejanus's gaze swept over the disgusting mold and tattered cobwebs, landing on an eerie, shimmering longsword. Found it. He strode toward the blade. Boom, boom, boom. The sudden roar of bolters behind him made Sejanus freeze. Were there still foul abominations here? Blinding death runes suddenly flared up in his eyepiece. Warriors of the Fourth Company were dying rapidly. A terrible thought flashed through Sejanus's mind, and just as he was about to turn around to look. Crack! A shimmering light pierced through his back and erupted from his chest. Sejanus, you will be buried in the ruins along with the glory of Terra. Erebus, why? Sejanus's right arm swung toward the slate-gray armor. The gods chose your death. Sejanus's punch missed. His consciousness fading, he thought, open black lens bracket the gods. Erebus, is a traitor, close black lens bracket. Erebus picked up the shimmering blade and gave orders to the word-bearers who had ambushed and killed the caught-off-guard 4th Company warriors. Set the melta charges. Ensure the scene looks like the ship was submerged by the wreckage exploding. 20 minutes later, a series of thunderous explosions rang out incessantly within the hull of the Glory of Terra. Erebus and his word-bearers sprinted toward the Stormbird. He shouted to the pilot, prepare for takeoff. Erebus boarded the craft, glancing at the soaring flames that swept through and ignited the viscous swamp. He switched his communication channel and sent a message to the orbit in a sorrowful tone. After Sejanus and I entered the Glory of Terra, we split up to search. I found the weapon that stabbed the Warmaster. Unfortunately, the plasma room of the Glory of Terra suddenly exploded. Sejanus and the 4th Company he led have been buried in the Inferno. 915. Nimrod, the crystals of the reflecting caves should belong to me. Deep inside the pyramid of Photep on Prospero, the captains of the 9 fellowships of the Thousand Suns stood together on the labyrinthine spiral patterns in Magnus's private chamber. Magnus looked around at the 9 members of the Grand Master of the Temple Council. You have all wanted to know what I saw in the amphitheater on Nicaea. I saw a prophecy regarding Horus. As he spoke, he opened the heavy grimoire in his hands and pointed to the last page filled with script. An ancient Egyptian prophecy once mentioned that at a certain moment in the distant future, the world would be filled with war. The sky god Heru was originally meant to protect his people from the threat of chaos. But he would instead turn to attack another golden deity named Sutek, to fight for the right to rule over all things. His subsequent form is called Camus, which means, Black Great Demon. Magnus spoke methodically, as if standing upon a pulpit, his shifting eyes turning black. Heru is one of many names for the ancient deity, and it can also be translated as Horus. The clues were always there, but I had overlooked them before. And so, after leaving Nicaea, I wandered the ocean of souls, pursuing the paths of the past and future, searching through a billion threads of fate from the dust-covered past to find the crucial rope upon which the destiny of the entire galaxy hangs. Chief Librarian Hather Mayat, who was closest to Magnus, already knew from the Black Emperor that Horus was about to fall. Reacting first, he followed up with a question. What else did the prophecy mention? Magnus's ever-changing single eye turned gray. It said that many of Horus's brothers would stand by his side. If Horus triumphs, he will become Heru-ur, meaning, Great Horus. If Sutek is defeated, his territory will be forever barren and desolate. The prophecy also mentioned a critical moment. Horus will become Mekenti-ur-T, meaning, the Blind One, under a new moon. Until the moon rises again, Horus will be extremely dangerous. Why would the Warmaster do such a thing? Asked the Primarch's attendant, Aemon. What reason could he have? Ambition. Jealousy. Guessed Caliphus, Grand Master of the Temple of the Fire Phoenix School. No. Ahriman, Grand Master of the Temple of the Black Raven School, shook his head. Only mortals wage war for such foolish reasons. For a Primarch, there must be another cause. The 9 captains all looked at Magnus. Their father was dressed like a funerary priest today. His shoulders were slumped, and a white cloak was draped over the back of his crimson robes. A weapon of terrible power struck down Horus, and the primordial power seeped into his soul. In his moment of weakness, the great enemy moved to capture his mind. 9. If we do not intervene, they will get what they want and tear the galaxy apart. What must we do? Hather asked. With your help, I will use ancient bronze machinery to project myself across the void to protect my brother. Magnus's eyes glowed with blue light. Aemon frowned. The incantations left by the original colonists in the plaza could indeed cross the void instantly to reach a target, but the records were incomplete. That spell requires an immense amount of energy, and we don't even know if it's truly feasible. It must be feasible, Magnus said indifferently. Gather the servants, pool their power into me, and drive the ascension of my mind. Magnus's disregard for life horrified Ahriman. Many servants will die in the ritual. The cost of so many servants is too high. Ahriman, if we do nothing, how high will the cost be then? Magnus said resolutely. My mind is made up. In 3 days, gather at the reflecting caves. Hather left with the other captains. He observed them from the perspective of a telepathist. Their mental bodies were tinged with the deep gray of worry. They clearly had deep misgivings about using an unknown, powerful spell. Ahriman's mental body was tinged with a pale black. Magnus's cold order to sacrifice the Legion's psychic servants terrified him. He silently parted from several captains and returned to his bright feather pyramid. Hather stepped into the magnificent pyramid, the polished marble slabs reflecting his perfect face. On rows of perfectly cut and proportioned bookshelves, data slates were arranged by category. Within the surrounding stasis fields lay beautifully bound ancient books. The biochemical psycher's eyes instantly turned obsidian as his gaze fell upon the black armor warriors. The 520 Order Shadows who had been hunting on Soul-Eating Peak in the Prospero Wilderness had returned to Tizca under the guise of resting when the fleet set sail. Recently, they had accelerated their visits to major libraries to browse and record books. Open black lens bracket. My lord anticipated this day long ago, close black lens bracket. He hurried up the spiral staircase, returning to the secret chamber at the top of the pyramid. Hather tapped his force staff lightly, activating the Euclidean rune. After the etheric tides receded, he knelt at the altar and prayed to the Black Emperor. On his third prayer, black mist engulfed him. Hather knelt in the black mist, looking up at the Black Emperor seated high upon his throne. My lord. Magnus has foreseen Horus's fall. He has ordered that in 3 days, at the reflecting caves, an ancient spell be used. Nimrod listened to Hather's report. Open black lens bracket as expected. Magnus still decided to stop Horus, and he will also attempt to warn the Emperor. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Each of his decisions is based on a rational choice at the time, yet they lead to results he never intended. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Because this universe itself is not rational. The existence of chaos dictates that his rational decisions lead to his tragic end. Close black lens bracket. After a silent sigh, he commanded, Magnus's attempt will fail. He will perform the ritual again to warn the Emperor. After the second mission, do your best to collect the psychic crystals within the reflecting caves. When Magnus disperses the fleet and offers no resistance to the Wolf Retribution fleet sent by the Emperor, deliver them to my Legion's cruiser. The psychic crystals in Tizca's reflecting caves were the finest in the galaxy. Whether used to craft force staves, force swords, or psychic hoods, they were top tier, especially for making divination focuses. The crystal illusion had a more abundant supply of psychic crystals, but the overall quality was inferior to Tizca's. Only the Heart Slayer's crystal statues were of superior quality. Open black lens bracket. The psychic crystals of the reflecting caves should not be destroyed along with Prospero. They should belong to me. Close black lens bracket. Hather's superhuman brain took several seconds to digest the shocking news. Magnus would try to warn the false emperor, who would then send a punishment for their use of psychic powers. The wolves would come, and Magnus would not resist. He would dismiss the fleet, leaving Prospero defenseless. Was Prospero facing its end? Could he and his school survive the cataclysm? Seeing Hather's body tremble slightly, Nimrod spoke in a deep voice. There is no need to worry. You will survive. Nimrod remembered that Hather survived the burning of Prospero. He didn't die in the wolves' attack, nor was he torn apart by the power infused by the guardian spirit Piok. To survive the flesh change later, he traded with Kyrus and altered a line in the Book of Magnus. Now, as a Sequence 5 Dreamwalker, he would only die if he encountered Lehman Russ. Even if he ran into Constantine Valder, he would have a chance to escape by using his Beander abilities to catch him off guard. Valder was not yet the future king in yellow. The Majesty in the Black Emperor's voice calmed Hather's chaotic emotions. Your task is to attempt to confirm from the dreams of Phocis Takar and Caliphus whether their subconscious minds lean toward me. In Argos, Nimrod had gifted psionic drakes of the 3rd layer space connection, in the 5th layer space corrosion, of the nation of disorder to 4 of the 5 Grand Master of the Temples. Uthizar, who had just succeeded the Sky Owl school, had not yet arrived in Argos at that time. He judged that Ahriman, Grand Master of the Temple of the Black Raven School, was unlikely to be loyal to him. The only ones who could possibly be swayed were Phocis Takar, Grand Master of the Temple of the Falcon School, and Caliphus, Grand Master of the Temple of the Fire Phoenix School. I have already secretly ordered the Order Shadows on Prospero to follow your command. After the cruiser leaves, 3 squads of Order Shadows will remain. They will help your school members, the Scarab Occult Terminators, and the Grand Master of the Temples who lean toward me to break free from their guardian spirits. After hearing the Black Emperor's arrangements, Hather's anxiety vanished, and he knelt devoutly. As you will. 916. If the Book of Magnus is offered to my lord, he will surely be pleased. The reflecting caves were located about 1 kilometer directly beneath the city of Tizca. Spanning several kilometers in width, the cavern roof, covered in stalactites, echoed with soft chiming day and night. Slender bronze instruments extended down from the center of the cavern roof, resembling a giant telescope. Its surface was inscribed with mysterious sigils and silver lines, and its top was set with a flawless green psychic crystal sphere, 3 meters in diameter. Magnus was clad in only a few scraps of cloth as his Primarch's attendant, Aemon, applied frankincense oil, a mixture of jasmine and sandalwood, to his shimmering skin. The Grand Master of the Temple of the Sky Owl School, the young Uthizar, scraped away the excess ointment with a small bone knife. Caliphus, Grand Master of the Temple of the Fire Phoenix School, held a censer emitting blue smoke, filling the air with the scent of plum blossoms. Standing directly beneath the green crystal sphere, he gazed through it at the night sky above the secret eye square. A heavy magnetized iron chain hung from the white square stone slab where Magnus stood, connecting 5 concentric circles surrounding the slab. The interiors of the outer 4 rings were inscribed with symbols that even the Thousand Sons did not yet understand. Every time Ahriman, Grand Master of the Temple of the Black Raven School, tried to decipher them, a sour taste would rise in his mouth. At every point on the concentric circles sat a concave mirror. 1,000 psychic servants trained by the Thousand Sons Legion stood at the intersections of the energy lines, holding shimmering psychic crystals in their hands, their light focusing onto the concave mirrors. The time has come. Chief Librarian Hather Mat approached, carrying a crown woven from verbena leaves, embedded with a silver chain. A white robe was draped over his armor, tied at the waist with a thin gold chain. Ahriman followed beside him, holding a gleaming ceremonial dagger with an obsidian hilt and a pure silver blade. They walked to Magnus together, and Uthizar stepped back. After wiping the ointment from his hands with silk, Aemon draped a white robe over Magnus. He then lifted a charcoal brazier, which emitted the scent of cinnamon and alder. Your body has been anointed, you are now pure and stainless. Magnus nodded and looked at Hather. The Crimson King requires his crown. Hather stepped before him, feeling the rolling heat radiating from Magnus's skin. Magnus lowered his head, and Hather placed the verbena crown upon it, the silver chain resting by his ears. My son, let us begin. Violet flames and chestnut flecks flickered within Magnus's eyes. Hather bowed in response. He took the heavy tome, its dull leather cover bound with gold thread. An iron amulet, its surface carved with a roaring wolf's head against a crescent moon, held the pages together. It was not originally part of the Book of Magnus, but a specific ritual item used to ensure the ceremony was directed toward Horus Lupercal. Hather's eyes glowed as he stared at the pages in his hands. During the Great Crusade, Magnus's personal remembrancer, Mahavastu Callimachus, had recorded the wisdom of the Thousand Sons, wisdom that sometimes only Magnus himself knew. Open black lens bracket. If I offer the Book of Magnus to my lord, he will surely be pleased. Close black lens bracket. Are we united? Magnus's words broke Hather's train of thought. If there is doubt, we can never complete this great work of salvation. What begins today in a cave of darkness shall end in a future of light. The 9 captains shouted in unison, we are united. Magnus looked around at the 9 captains standing in the innermost concentric circle. We are by no means mindless pawns on a great game board. Instead, we shall make the most resolute effort to master our own destiny. Humanity shall master the tides and no longer drift with the current. He nodded to Caliphus. Caliphus walked toward the white stone slab. 1,000 servants began to chant in an incomprehensible, monotonous tone, and the crystals in their hands simultaneously burst into brilliant light. Caliphus held the censer and began to circle to the right, the incense forming a ring. Hather followed behind him, reciting mysterious verses from the Book of Magnus that he had never known before. With every word uttered, he could feel the power contained within. Ahriman followed closely, holding the ceremonial dagger in both hands. Next came Uthizar, carrying an unlit lantern, and finally Aemon, holding the glowing charcoal brazier. The 5 stood still after circling the white stone slab 9 times. Magnus moved into their midst and lay down upon the slab. Uthizar used Amon's brazier to light the lantern with a candle. Caliphus held the censer high, suspended over Magnus's body. Hathor recited the Book of Magnus loudly. Through his etheric sight, the psyker saw streams of etheric energy gushing from the crystals, converging around the 1,000 suns. The mist-like etheric light, carrying the life essence of the servants, poured into the mirrors and finally converged upon Magnus's body. Hathor, give me the moon wolf. Hathor picked up the iron amulet. The crescent moon pattern glinted silver in the cave's light, and the teeth of the great wolf emblem shone like icicles. He placed the amulet in Magnus's palm and wrapped the chain around his fingers. Magnus gripped the amulet. Horus gave this to me on Bacca. It was once an ornament on his armor, knocked off his pauldron by a stray bullet. Horus gave it to me as a memento of that battlefield. Horus gave it to me and told me jokingly that it would guide me through the darkness. Ahriman's eyes were deep. Today, you shall guide him through the darkness. Indeed, Magnus said, closing his eyes and pushing his mind to the 10th level, focusing entirely on the bond of brotherhood. Puff! Crimson blood welled from his shoulder, staining the white robe. The Primarch let out an irrepressible groan of pain. Phocis Takar, Grand Master of the Temple of the Falcon School, looked on with worry. What is happening to father? Sympathetic damage, explained Hathor, Grand Master of the Temple of the Bright Feather School. The War Master has been wounded. He looked at Ahriman. Do your duty. Ahriman nodded vigorously. The ceremonial dagger in his hand began to vibrate, then spun out and hovered directly above Magnus's heart. The silver chain of the verbena crown unraveled on its own, sliding down the edge of the white stone slab and intertwining with the magnetized iron chain. Magnus's eyes lit up. I shall journey through the ocean of souls. No matter what happens, do not sever my connection to the ether. The 5 captains surrounding Magnus and the 4 behind them exchanged worried glances. Complete the ritual. Magnus's voice cut through their thoughts. Obeying his father's command, Ahriman let the ceremonial dagger fall, plunging it into Magnus's chest. Shining blood sprayed as brilliant white light surged from the accumulated mirrors, pouring into the hilt of the ceremonial dagger. Magnus's body arched, and he let out a roar. He suddenly opened his single eye. There was no iris, no pupil, only the blooming of infinite colors. Horus, my brother, I am coming. Propelled by the 1,000 psychic servants, Magnus's soul took flight. Hathor watched as blinding light soared into the sky from Magnus's body. Greater than 917. Nimrod hidden his achievements. Why did he hand over the position of Warmaster to me? Horus Lupercal opened his eyes and looked up at the giant bird with a broad wingspan circling in the azure sky. He withdrew his gaze and looked around. Hundreds of fluffy-furred herbivores were wandering across the grassland. Horus recalled how he had come here and what he had been doing before. But he could not remember clearly. There were only some scattered fragments of memory, and the harder he tried to recall them, the more dim and illusory the contents became. A howling sound suddenly rang out, piercing straight through the mist in his heart. Horus clutched his shoulder as a searing pain spread from there throughout his entire body. The trees swayed wildly as over 100 giant wolves emerged from the depths of the woodland. Every giant wolf had a strange brand on its fur in the shape of a black double-headed eagle. The outline of the leading giant wolf flickered and blurred, and a staring single eye was vaguely visible on its forehead. He spoke and asked, "Who are you?" "I am Horus." "Who are you?" The giant wolf repeated the question. "I am Horus," he replied irritably. "What else do you need to know?" "My brother, my time is running out." The giant wolf reminded him, "You must think clearly before he comes. Who are you?" "I am Horus, and if I am already dead, stop bothering me." He suddenly leapt up and charged into the depths of the jungle. The wolf pack whistled with the wind, following Horus and asking over and over, "Who are you?" Horus sprinted all the way, bursting out of the woodland. He stopped abruptly. The sky above was pitch black, without a single star. A pure white moon hung high in the firmament, its scorching light shining down upon him. The wolves howled again, repeating the question in unison, "Who are you?" An explosion rang out in Horus's mind as countless memories emerged in chaos. The moon, the wolves, the wolf god. Shadow moon, pale wolf. Horus looked up at the sky and roared loudly, "I am Horus of the Luna Wolves, Imperial Warmaster. I am still alive." Horus leapt up, and at the same moment the lake's surface shattered like glass. The flickering candlelight illuminated the cave of Davin. Dalphus, a technician of the cult Mechanicus, had always been dissatisfied with the restrictions imposed by the Emperor. He gladly provided assistance to Erebus in exchange for the knowledge he offered. Knowledge that was strictly forbidden by the Emperor. Akshub, an acolyte under the priestess, used quicklime to draw a circle on the ground with 8 sharp corners around it. Erebus supervised the priestess's coven maids as they took their positions around the circle. He had invested immense effort for this day. But he also knew that the strings of fate had been laid out thousands of years ago. Hundreds of seemingly independent events were linked together in a sequence at the critical moment, collectively leading the Warmaster to remote Davin. After Akshub finished setting up the ritual markings, he leaned down and cut out the heart from the acolyte's corpse lying spread-eagled in the center of the mark. The priestess of the Serpent Temple removed the warm heart from the chest with practiced technique, took a bite, and handed it to the acolyte beside her for punishment. The heart was passed in turn, and every believer opened their mouth to gnaw on the crimson flesh. Erebus finally took the remains of the heart and ate it all. Blood flowed along the corners of his mouth to his chin as the word-bearer tasted the acolyte's final memories. He experienced the treacherous blade that took the acolyte's life, a sacrifice of betrayal dedicated to the Fate Weaver. Blood offerings pleased the blood god, calling upon the power of the Dark Prince and the Lord of Decay. The one-eyed ghost travels between dimensions, delusionally wanting to return the lost scion to his father's side, the priestess reminded. Erebus looked up at the roof. Magnus, don't think you can stop us. You are far away, and it is already impossible for Horus to turn back. Let us begin quickly. The priestess could not wait to complete the mission the gods had bestowed upon her thousands of years ago. At her signal, Zephyr stepped forward and applied antimony crystals to Erebus's face. It will blind Horus's senses. What he will see is a familiar and friendly face. Changing faces, Memories of when he obtained his current face and name flashed through Erebus's mind, and he couldn't help but smile. After the silver-white powder was applied to his cheeks, the serpent priestess squinted. There is one last step before you can enter Horus's warp imagery. What? Erebus asked. Your death. As soon as the priestess finished speaking, Akshub stepped forward and swung a dagger to slit Erebus's throat. Erebus's soul floated up, and in the hazy dimness, the cave of the Serpent Temple vanished. He lay floating in the lake water. Splash! Erebus looked up and saw Horus swimming towards him. Horus grabbed the pauldrons of Hastur Cyanus, held him tightly, and swam upward. Horus carried Sejanus to the surface, looking worriedly at his neck. Sejanus vomited a mouthful of water and reached up to scratch his throat, but felt nothing. Horus looked into Sejanus's spirited silver eyes. My son. Sejanus stood up and embraced Horus. Father. The two embraced tightly, only letting go after a long time. You came here. Father, I am here to help you, Sejanus said. Our time is running out. He will be here soon. I've heard that more than once recently, Horus said. Sejanus's expression turned solemn. Who else have you heard it from? A wolf, Horus said with a smile. I know, it sounds ridiculous, but it really did speak. Father, I believe you. Only now did Sejanus realize that Magnus had already seen Horus. He couldn't help but thank the Lord of Change for the revelation that allowed him to meet Horus in the guise of his beloved son. Because of this, our time is running out. Horus sensed that something was hidden in Sejanus's words, and he asked in the tone of a warmaster, where are we? Quote. Sejanus helplessly replied, your body lies in the Delphus on Davin. Delphus. I've never heard of it, Horus pressed. The Delphus is a sacred place of the Serpent Lodge, a healing hall. In the Gothic of Terra, it means, womb of the world. It can allow you to gain a new life. Your body currently lies within the hall of the Axis Mundi, but your soul has departed from its physical shell. This is the warp, Horus said thoughtfully. Yes. Sejanus nodded. I have obtained their help to save your life. Who are they? Horus asked in confusion. The great beings of the warp. They have chosen you as an emissary to act in the physical world on their behalf. That doesn't sound right. Horus furrowed his brows. What if I am unwilling to be their emissary? Sejanus looked at him. Father, you will die, only they can save you now. If they are so powerful, why do they still need me? Horus asked, puzzled. Though they are powerful, they cannot exist in the physical universe, they must act through an emissary, Sejanus praised enthusiastically. You are powerful and ambitious, in the galaxy, no one else possesses your authority and quality. Their evaluation made Horus feel satisfied, but everything around him remained unsettling. The howling of wolves suddenly rang out, and the ground suddenly cracked open. Sejanus's face changed, we must leave at once. He pointed to the elliptical glow emerging by the lake, it is our only means of escape. A great man once said, a transcendent genius often disdains the beaten path, he actively seeks those unexplored realms. Horus chuckled, Hastur, you are quoting my own words to me. Your words will be immortal. Sejanus's praise made Horus chuckle. He looked at the slowly forming portal, where does this door lead? Truth, Sejanus, replied. Horus strode after Sejanus, and stepped through the shining portal. He looked around and found himself standing in a basalt plaza. Blurred lines outlined human silhouettes, invisible warriors appeared like cut-out paper figures, raising their weapons and firing charged beams at the black armor warriors. Horus followed the explosive booms and saw figures in black armor and gold wings rapidly ascending. Order Shadow. Nimrod. Where is this? A war led by Nimrod and the Order Shadow. Horus asked. This is Terra, its leader is the Emperor. The corners of Sejanus's mouth curled. Horus shook his head vigorously. Impossible, there is only one Terra, and the Emperor is unique. Quote. Sejanus was in no hurry to refute. He spoke. Terra is located in a system of 11 planets. This war is not happening now, but is a war that already ended in the year 882. The year 882, Horus recalled the records of the War Council, and his eyes suddenly narrowed. The Primarch repeatedly scanned the memories of his post-human brain, but there was not a single related memory. He gazed around. The invisible warriors wore sophisticated armor and energy weapons. Undoubtedly, this civilization possessed advanced technology and could be classified by planetary taxonomy experts as a civilized world. This was a great achievement of conquest. Why had Nimrod never reported this to the War Council? Nimrod, were there other unreported achievements? Could his achievements rival, or even, surpass my own? If so, why did he hand over the position of Warmaster to me? While Horus was lost in thought, he silently began walking toward the high tower. Sejanus followed beside Horus. The Warmaster had already begun to wonder if his position was truly deserved. Horus had always believed his military record was the best among the Primarchs and that it was only natural for him to become the Warmaster of the Empire. Now, he saw the truth that the gods were ruthlessly revealing to him. This was exactly the beginning the gods wanted. First the suppression of Horus's pride, then the stimulation of his competitive spirit and ambition. Just as Horus was about to step into the tower, the ground suddenly trembled. Rumble. The tower exploded violently, and shattered stained glass fell like rain, whirling and floating chaotically in the air. Sejanus's brows furrowed as he looked at the broken world. Why did the gods not continue to show Horus Nimrod's achievements? Why not further provoke Horus? 918. Nimrod is trivial, you shall become the new emperor of mankind. What happened? Why was the tower destroyed? Where is Nimrod? Horus Lupercal asked gloomily, looking at Sejanus. You have witnessed the truth, now for the next one. Sejanus snapped back to reality, guiding Horus to focus on the present. Horus looked around and found himself in a massive circular plaza, surrounded by sky-piercing towers and magnificent marble buildings. Thousands upon thousands of people surrounded rows of statues. On the periphery of the statues, warriors clad in shimmering power armor clustered around 11 statues. The central statue wore shining golden battle armor and held a blazing torch high, its fiery brilliance illuminating all things. Horus read the meaning within. He brings light to his people. His gaze was then captured by an obsidian statue adjacent to the golden one. The image of black armor and golden wings clearly depicted Nimrod. On the other side was his close friend Sanguinius with wings unfurled, and beside him were Rogel Dorn wearing a winged circlet, Lionel Johnson, Lehman Russ, and Corvus Corax. Horus followed the line of statues. Beside Nimrod were Rabute Gilliman, Ferus Manus, Vulcan, and Jagat Khan. The one in the center was undoubtedly his father, the Emperor of mankind. But why were there only 10 brothers? Where were the other 9? While Horus pondered, at the stepped base of the statue group, a corpulent official wrapped in golden robes wore a crown. Numerous relics shaped like winged infants hovered above, holding silver trumpets to broadcast his words to every corner of the plaza. The God Emperor blesses you. This is a place of pilgrimage, Horus said in disbelief. How could Father allow a world that so blatantly defied the imperial truth to exist? The surrounding pilgrims seemed not to notice their presence, praying in low voices as they walked forward. Sejanus came to his side and said mockingly, indeed. This is a shrine world, the entire world is dedicated to praising the God Emperor. Horus roared, the Emperor is not a god, he spent centuries freeing humanity from the slavery of religion. It does seem impossible for now, but if you allow the Empire to develop, this is its future, Sejanus reminded him. The Emperor has the power of prophecy, he has long known of such a future. Why? Horus said, incredulous. He destroyed other faiths to ensure his own church was the only object of the people's belief, Sejanus explained. My father denies all divinity imposed upon him. Horus shook his head vigorously. He once said that the teachers of ancient Terra are like torches, while priests are like fire extinguishers. He would never extinguish the truth. Father, look around, the entire world is his temple, Sejanus spoke. And there isn't just one. There are more worlds like this. Horus's eyes widened. Thousands, Sejanus said derisively. Impossible. The word-bearers once erected statues for the emperor, and he punished Lorgar for it, Horus argued. A flicker of flame rose in Sejanus's silver eyes. He had not yet fully controlled the galaxy then, so he was not yet ready to accept worship. Think about it. What will the emperor do once he has conquered the galaxy? Besides ascending to godhood, what else is worth his effort? His return to Terra was to prepare for this. Horus stared at the official. He now knew the man must be a priest. His chanting was continuous as numerous pilgrims slowly circled the statues of their deity, praising the god emperor. Horus looked around. Every stone slab was inscribed with pious prayers, gold-plated remains rested within 1,000-meter-high ossuaries, and marble monuments were densely carved with the deeds of saints. Fanatical believers knelt by the roadside. One swung a prayer whip, feverishly lashing his own flesh. Massive prayer ships drifted above the shrine city, the bloated vessels trailing long prayer banners, while harsh hymns blared from suspended loudspeakers shaped like blackened skulls. An angel with milky white skin and brass wings suddenly swooped down toward the gathered civilians. It snatched a pilgrim into the air, surrounded by 4 giggling winged infants. Their flapping bone banners clattered, and the trumpets in their hands echoed with funeral dirges of death. Accompanied by the eager praises of onlookers, they pulled the pilgrim into the gates of a grim tomb. On every gate and stained glass window of the tombs and surrounding buildings, Horus saw the veneration of death. His gaze fell back upon the statue of the emperor, looking at Nimrod and Sanguinius, questioning. I am his chosen warmaster, I have fought bloody battles for him thousands of times. My sons die for him, yet he ignores me completely, as if I do not exist at all. Horus rubbed his right pinky finger. He felt nothing. The emperor has abandoned you, and he will soon forsake his people entirely. We have all been deceived by him. He appointed you warmaster only because he needed you then, but when the time comes, he does not want you to share in his power and glory. While we fought valiantly in the emperor's name, he was gathering power in the warp. No, Horus roared, leaping forward. Bang! He punched the chanting priest. It was as if an invisible barrier shattered, and he reduced the preacher to a pulp. Horus rushed into the plaza. The crowd parted for his mad dash, then returned to gazing fervently at the statue of the god emperor. No one paid him any attention. Horus stopped, despondent, realizing Sejanus had also vanished. He was completely alone. The people around him showed no reverence or love, they didn't even know who he was. Not a single mural, portrait, or relief depicted his existence in the slightest. Did they not know who shed blood and sweat to win battle after battle, liberating humanity from alien enslavement? Father, why have you forsaken me? The sound of a wolf's howl suddenly rang out, and an oval light bloomed ahead. The statues collapsed with a crash, crushing the pilgrims into pulps of flesh. Horus stepped into the light and found himself in a large, pristine laboratory. He looked at Sejanus, who was waiting for him, and asked, "Where are we?" The dawn of a new era. They walked side by side through a steel corridor into a wide room. A central aisle ran through the hall, with 10 spindle-shaped storage tanks standing on each side, each marked with a sequence number on its flank. Horus's eyes suddenly jolted, the sight before him felt familiar. This is the Emperor's gene laboratory, the place of your creation. You have seen the Emperor's ultimate goal, now it is time to witness how he initiates his plan for godhood. Horus frowned. By using the Primarchs. Exactly. He created the Primarchs to serve as generals and conquer the galaxy for him, Sejanus said. He needed extraordinary individuals to lead the Astartes. The generals' combat skills were second only to the Emperor himself, and each possessed unique abilities. To conquer the galaxy for humanity, Horus repeated his father's expectation. Sejanus countered, not for humanity, but for the Emperor himself. You saw just now what fate you will face. When he abandons all living things to become a god alone, you will be discarded as well. Nimrod, Sanguinius, Guilliman, Lion, why weren't they abandoned? Horus asked. They are all blind followers of the Emperor, Sejanus said with disdain. They will never see the truth. That doesn't make sense, Horus pressed. Why would Nimrod hide his achievements? Since he is loyal to Father, he should strive to prove his deeds. Sejanus's silver eyes shifted. He has self-awareness, he knows he is but a weapon, while you are the Emperor's favored commander. He must rely on you. Think back on the Emperor's decisions. Has he ever truly cared about what others think? He has always been carrying out his own plan. But his plan, it changed. Horus was drawn in by Sejanus's words, his gaze deepening. An accident. We were scattered across many worlds until Father found us one by one. Sejanus shook his head. There was no accident. Look at the protective runes engraved around you now, no accident could break through these defenses. The Primarchs, without exception, landed on human home worlds with long histories rather than uninhabited worlds. Is that a coincidence? Think again. If the Emperor could truly create Primarchs by his own power alone, why not create 100, 1,000 Horuses? Sejanus's eyes shone. The forging of the Primarchs was a bargain. The masters of the warp are your fathers just as much as the Emperor is. No, Horus roared. The Primarchs are my brothers, the children of the Emperor. They are indeed a part of him, but where did that power come from? Sejanus said calmly. He made a deal with the warp gods, bartering for a portion of their power to infuse into your bodies. Warp gods? Horus asked in shock. Hastur, you know what you're saying. Of course I do, Sejanus held his head high. War, change, decay, sensation, all of these belong to the domains of the warp gods. Their power surges through your veins, granting you transcendent abilities. The Emperor made a deal with them but betrayed them, stealing their power. So, we were tainted by the warp from birth, Horus whispered. Not tainted, Sejanus said. Your transcendent abilities allow you to wield the power of the warp. You shall punish the Emperor's betrayal. He pointed at the gestation pods. Justice descends. Horus looked out as a brilliant vortex suddenly rose in the laboratory, swallowing him. Sejanus's voice rang in his ears. The gods will generously grant you great power, you will control their strength. Nimrod is trivial, you will achieve deeds no one can match. The false emperor will fall, and you will become the new emperor of mankind, bringing a bright future to humanity. Countless visions flashed through Horus's eyes, filthy Xenos reclaiming vast swaths of the galaxy, humanity confined to a corner. Imperial departments bloated like tumors, hundreds of millions of administrators inefficient and corrupt, countless citizens spending dark lives under lifelong oppression. His father turned into a corpse god, indifferent to the suffering of the masses. Horus declared resolutely, I will never allow such a future to pass. As soon as he spoke, the visions of the future shown by the entities deep within the warp abruptly dissipated. A wolf's howl suddenly rang out, and a pack of giant wolves with crimson fur stepped out of the shadows. Lupercal, what are you? I am your brother. Golden light erupted from the lead wolf's body as it stood on its hind legs, its torso shifting until it became human in form. Copper-colored skin replaced the fur, and a single eye flashed with golden light. Magnus. It is I, my brother. He stepped forward and embraced Horus tightly. After they separated, Horus asked in confusion, are you going to die too? No, I am not dead. But my time is short. To break through the spell barrier, my servants are sacrificing their lives every moment. Father, do not believe him. Sejanus stepped out from the shadows. He is a shape-shifting monster of the warp, feeding on human souls. He wants to devour you and prevent you from returning to your own body. He lies. Magnus shouted. Horus, you know me. And he is not Hastur Cyanus, he is already dead. Magnus pointed a hand at Sejanus, and silver lightning leapt out, striking him. Horus turned his eyes, seeing gray rock-colored armor emerge within the blinding light. Erebus. Erebus felt his charred body rapidly recover and said mockingly to Magnus, you are too far away. He looked at Horus and bowed. Yes, Warmaster. I disguised myself as Sejanus to meet you in order to save you and to help you know the truth. Horus, do not listen to him, Magnus warned. The future of the galaxy is in your hands. Indeed it is, Erebus said, walking to the other side. The Emperor intends to abandon the galaxy and ascend to godhood alone. You must save humanity. The future is not set in stone. Erebus may have shown you a future, but it is only one possible future. Magnus's single eye flashed with golden light. Erebus said with fervent tone, of course, the future can indeed be changed, and the one to change humanity's destiny is you. Horus suddenly laughed aloud. Erebus, if you think your low-grade tricks can deceive me into joining you, you must take me for a fool. He looked away from Erebus's disappointed face and toward the smiling Magnus. You and Erebus are two of a kind. Horus declared with his head held high, neither of you is trustworthy. Don't think you can play me like a puppet. No one can decide for me anymore. I am Horus. I am the Warmaster. My destiny is mine to decide. 919. Exchanging 3 psionic drakes for 1 Grand Master of the Temple, I've made a huge profit. Torrential rain poured down as tens of thousands of Imperial soldiers gathered around Delphus. 9 days had passed since the death of Hastur Cyanus, after which the Primarchs attendant Malahurst, First Captain Ezekiel Abaddon, and Asimandamon, with the support of the warrior lodges, sent the Warmaster into the Temple of the Serpent Lodge. For 9 days, rumbling thunder roared above the heads of the sons of Horus. Scattered around were auxilia soldiers in uniform and remembrancers kneeling in the mud. Abaddon, Asimandamon, and Torgadon stood side by side at the edge of the rippling pond before the great gates. They gazed anxiously toward the temple. Serpent statues atop stone pillars seemed to flicker with moving electric snakes. The thunder stopped abruptly, the sky's brilliance vanished instantly, and the heavens became unimaginably peaceful, with the dark water reflecting a full moon. A black line suddenly appeared, splitting the gate in two. The gates slowly opened. The sons of Horus held their breath, their entire perceived world reduced to the gradually widening dark rift. The gates opened completely. Shining platinum armor emerged from the depths of the darkness. Horus Lupercal's shoulders bore a magnificent purple cloak, and at his waist hung the golden longsword forged for him by Ferrus Manus. The ice sigil at the center of his breastplate erupted with flaming light. He looked peerless and heroic, wearing a laurel crown. Horus stepped proudly out of the gate, his physique even more robust than before. He smiled and said, "My sons, it is good to see you." Asimandamon shed tears. "Father." Torgadon raised his fist high. "Lupercal." Abaddon roared, "Warmaster." The remaining 3 members of the Council of 4 Kings strode toward their father, followed closely by Garvil Loken and other sons of Horus. News of the Warmaster's safety spread rapidly, reaching the expeditionary forces around the temple in an instant. Tens of thousands of voices simultaneously shouted the names of the Warmaster and Lupercal. The deafening cheers lasted all night. At the same moment, the 9-day downpour in Tizca also came to an end. The mechanical psionic array, which usually predicted and controlled the entire planet's climate without error, failed for the first time since its establishment. On the 6th day of the downpour, citizens who had never experienced such rain stripped off their clothes and ran wild in celebration at the secret ice square. Tizca had no law enforcement. The Prospero Spire Guard was urgently deployed to send them back to their homes. On the 7th day, several people suddenly fell ill with fatal viral pneumonia. The medical spires affiliated with the Bright Feather Pyramid intervened urgently, but 63 people still lost their lives. On the 9th day, the dark clouds pressing down on Tizca were pierced by golden light. Golden light shot down, plunging into the brazier atop the central stone pillar of Secret Ice Square, its blooming radiance illuminating the entire city of Tizca. Deep within the reflecting caves, the light returned to its source, and Magnus opened his single eye. The ritual dagger buried deep in his chest ejected automatically, its blade decomposing instantly upon exposure to the air. The 9 captains breathed a sigh of relief, while Ahriman sighed silently. Of the 1,000 psionic servants, only 81 remained alive. Their bodies were aged and decayed, and the crystals they held were dim and lusterless. He asked, "Was it worth it? Did you succeed?" Magnus's azure eye gazed at him dimly, and he shook his head. "When I tried to save my brother, someone pushed him into the abyss." Chief Librarian Hather Mad asked curiously, "Who?" "A beast, Erebus," Magnus spat in disgust. "The intent to capture Horus's power has clearly yielded results. Lorgar and the Word-Bearers have fallen into ponds of chaos." "Chaos?" Caliphus, the Grand Master of the Temple of the Fire Phoenix School, followed up with a question. "Chaos is the primordial annihilator, hidden deep within the ocean of souls since the dawn of creation, yet now it extends its tentacles into the real world." "The primordial annihilator, I've never heard of it," said Phocis Takar, Grand Master of the Temple of the Falcon School. "Before facing Horus and Erebus, neither had I." Hather, from his perspective as a telepathist, caught a subtle flicker in Magnus's words. "What do we do now? Should we warn the Emperor?" asked Uthizar, Grand Master of the Temple of the Sky Owl School. "Of course, we must," Magnus nodded. "If my father knows in time, he can resolve it before the situation spirals out of control." He said wearily, "Return to your schooled temples and wait for my summons. Ahriman, gather all the power of the Black Raven School to interpret the future. At any cost, learn the future we must know." Hather reluctantly handed the Book of Magnus to Magnus and left the reflecting caves with the other captains. Returning to the top floor of the Bright Feather Pyramid, he performed a psychological suggestion on himself and then lay down on the bed. After a few breaths, Hather had entered a dream. In the hazy mist, the dreamwalker clearly realized he had arrived within a dream. Hather looked around and found that he had not appeared in the amphitheater of Nicaea again, but was walking in Secret Eye Square. He suddenly pulled out a force staff from his back and stared at the edge of the gray fog. Crackle! The psychic crystal flared with brilliant light as the Grand Master of the Temple of the Bright Feather School waved his ornate staff, pointing it at the dozen or so gray-armored warriors charging out. Bang bang bang! The space wolves contorted as they were struck, the oxygen-rich blood in their bodies vaporizing. Roar! 2 giant wolves accompanied a gray-armored giant walking out of the mist. The Wolf King, Leman Russ. My lord's prophecy allowed me to prepare in advance, but I still cannot help but feel fear. Hather examined his own dream from the perspective of a psychiatrist. The 1,000 suns will not disappear like that legion. The Black Emperor protects me. Golden light erupted from Hather's eyes, shooting straight into Russ's ice-blue eyes. Roar! Russ roared and lunged, frenziedly, into the gray mist, chasing enemies within the fog in a state of rage. Hather watched the direction in which the Wolf King disappeared, the corners of his mouth curling up. The golden light in his eyes gradually became pure and increasingly brilliant. The gray mist churned, and the area it covered suddenly expanded by a fifth. Open black lens bracket. I have completely mastered the power bestowed by my lord. Close black lens bracket. The Dreamwalker thought joyfully. The wolves were coming. By mastering the Black Emperor's power at this time, he would be better able to survive the Great War and complete the Black Emperor's mission. The Dreamwalker walked past the edge of the dream to a cliffside and raised his arm. The gray mist surged, and steps began to emerge one by one. The Dreamwalker stepped down, looking at the majestic red Cyclops and the figure of the Black Emperor that was only half present in the collective subconscious of the 1,000 suns. He clasped his hands in reverse and prayed to the Black Emperor. Using bright feather techniques, Hather turned his eyes to obsidian and walked step by step toward the black-armored, gold-winged giant. A point of dazzling light reflected in his eyes, as whirling and dancing flames left a shining trail in the air. Caliphus. Hather's eyes lit up, and he approached with interest. The Dreamwalker extended his spirituality, quietly touching the flames. What is your impression of Lord Nimrod? A streak of golden flame suddenly rose within the fiery red flames. The Dreamwalker was not surprised to see this dream. Although Caliphus was not as advanced in mental state as Ignis, the Lord of Ruin, he had also mastered the 8th level, and it would be impossible to infiltrate his dream in a short time. But he had received a revelation. He recalled the only intersection between Caliphus and Lord Nimrod, Argos. Caliphus had witnessed the flames released by Lord Nimrod's golden wings and had developed an adoration for his terrifying power. Hather then wandered between the Black Emperor and his father, searching through Taka's subconscious. Finally, he found a soaring eagle on Magnus's back. Hather shook his head slightly, then climbed upward as his consciousness returned to his own body. After raising a Euclidean rune, he knelt on the ground and prayed to the Black Emperor. In the 4th level of the Nation of Disorder, Nimrod sat high upon his throne, having finished listening to Hather's report. Open black lens bracket. Caliphus, not the best result, but not bad either. Close black lens bracket. Within the Order Shadow, those who inherited his sensory talent in the librarium were mostly from the Sky Owl School, specializing in the mental domain. If Beyonders were matched with the remaining 4 schools, the Black Raven School, which specialized in divination, had sequence 9 inches Seer, of the Fool pathway who began to master these abilities, sequence 8 inches Robot, of the Wheel of Fortune, and sequence 7 of the Door pathway, the Astrologer. Lord Flamini of the 6th chapter and Lord William Wood of the 12th chapter were both of the prophecy type and possessed Beyander abilities in divination. They were not lacking either. The Rose Bishops began to master flesh and blood magic, similar to the techniques of the Bright Feather School. Hather had already been swayed by him, and along with Lord Ramsay of the 10th chapter, the Order Shadow did not lack in the biochemical domain. The sequence 7 inches Pyromaniac of the Red Priest pathway began to control fire, and the sequence 7 inches Witch of the Demoness pathway could manipulate black flames that burned spiritual bodies. Lord Sanchez of the 7th chapter was well versed in fire control, but Caliphus of the Fire Phoenix School also had his unique strengths. In particular, Nimrod remembered that the Fire Phoenix School, led by Caliphus, excelled at controlling robots, especially the Achaean pattern Castellix robots, to unleash fury on the battlefield. Originally, during the burning of Prospero, he had used the power of the guardian spirit Ciota to single-handedly accomplish what normally required an entire Titan crew, controlling the warlord Titan, Canis Vertex. However, because Nimrod had established a pact with the Forge World Lucius in advance, the Void Walkers, Titan Legion had been accompanying the Order Shadow in battle, so Caliphus had not obtained Canis Vertex. In the Order Shadow, what was most lacking was the Falcon School, which mastered telekinesis. Only sequence 6 inches Barons of Corruption could master similar Beyander abilities, Force, and Multiversal Prism. Sequence 6 Beyonders were naturally fewer than those of lower sequences. Open black lens bracket. In any case, I have the potential to sway another Grandmaster of the Temple. It was worth gifting those psionic drakes of Connection and Corrosion back at Argos. Besides Hather, there's Ahriman, Taka, and Caliphus, exchanging 3 psionic drakes for 1 Grand Master of the Temple. I've gained a huge profit. Close black lens bracket. When the wolves raid Prospero, pay attention to Caliphus's situation. As you will, my lord. Hather bowed and accepted the command. Greater than 920. I once took pride in discovering secrets that Nimrod failed to witness, yet now I have destroyed father's dream. Magnus meditated for 2 days and 2 nights, and after restoring his state, he once again summoned the captains of the 9 cults. Ahriman's gaze swept over the 900 psychic thralls in the reflecting caves. They were all the thralls the Thousand Sons had cultivated. Each of them held a gleaming psychic crystal, pouring their life force into it without reservation. After this ritual, how many would still survive? Magnus's single eye scanned the thralls. 900 was far from his ideal number, but it would have to suffice. Just as he had no other choice now. Begin. Ahriman, Grand Master of the Temple of the Black Raven School, stepped forward. Father, if we are to breach the Xenos webway through this spell, we must trade with the most dangerous entities within the Ocean of Souls. Their name, translated into Gothic, is Devil. Devil is nothing more than a term fabricated by superficial minds. Magnus's eyes shifted to blue, shimmering with the light of wisdom. Long ago, I encountered an entity of the Ocean of Souls. He is a vastly immense entity of wisdom. His power is as vast as the sea, incomparable even to the brightest stars of the mortal world. Such an entity can be bargained with. Ahriman did not step back. Since he is so powerful, are you truly certain you can hold the upper hand? I am certain I can. Magnus promised. I have traded with him before, and this time will be no different. We are using forbidden power to warn the Emperor. Will he believe us? Ahriman continued to question. We have no choice. Ambiguous astropathic messages cannot convey the news accurately. Magnus's eyes shifted to gold. I will arrive at Terra bearing news of Horus's rebellion. Once father witnesses what I have seen, he will surely discern the truth. As he spoke, Magnus handed the Book of Magnus to Chief Librarian Hather Mat. Only he and Ahriman possessed minds clear enough and the transcendent control over their mental states to recite the ritual incantations with precision. Yet Ahriman was clearly filled with anxiety about the ritual, while Hather had recently even touched the threshold of the 10th state of mind. Magnus had thought Ahriman might have a slight chance of reaching the highest level, but he had not expected Hather to reach this realm. Open black lens bracket. Hather's performance has repeatedly exceeded my expectations. I hope that with his assistance this time, I can bring positive change to the Empire. Close black lens bracket. Magnus walked to the space directly beneath the bronze apparatus, gazing at the green gem at its base. Magnus ascended to the 10th state of mind, freeing himself from the constraints of his physical body amidst Hather's chanting. He condensed his consciousness into an arrow, shooting toward distant Terra. Magnus's consciousness sped through the surging light and flowing colors of the Ocean of Souls. Suddenly, the radiance surrounding the arrow dimmed slightly. He knew he had lost some of his psychic thralls. The sudden extinguishing of their soul fires caused his forward momentum to diminish instantly. I can do this, Magnus whispered softly. I once discovered on Argos a mystery that the keen Nimrod had missed. Magnus's mind's eye blazed with light, surveying the glorious, resplendent Ocean of Souls. A searing, conspicuous golden thread suddenly appeared in his mind's eye. With a thought, Magnus sent the arrow flying toward the golden path. Bang! The arrow struck an invisible wall, and dozens of psychic thralls died. Bang! Dozens more psychic thralls died. However, the invisible barrier of the Xenos webway remained completely unshaken. Magnus determined that he could not rely on his own power to breach the Xenos barrier, so he sent out a cry to a distant corner of the Ocean of Souls. A familiar sensation washed over him. A vastly immense entity was moving within the tides, like tectonic plates spanning an ocean. He emitted bursts of hissing, like sand falling into an hourglass. He possessed boundless breadth and depth, yet had no beginning or end, as if he had always been by Magnus's side. He spoke, not by uttering words, but by transmitting power. Radiance spread from the depths of the Ocean of Souls, converging upon the arrow. Magnus felt the power generously provided to him by the great entity. The cost this time was far smaller than he had anticipated. He did not even have to pay the price of an eye, as he had last time. The arrow shattered the Xenos wall, and the cruelly breached webway shrieked incessantly. Beneath the Terra Imperial Palace, 2 heavy golden doors stood in the room, like the entrance to a magnificent fortress. Countless cables intertwined, connecting to the 10-meter-tall golden throne. Between them were densely packed dimensional suppressors and void buffers of unimaginable complexity, with thousands of technicians busily maintaining their operation. The Emperor, seated upon the golden throne, suddenly rose, looking toward the light bursting from within the golden doors. Countless extremely delicate and irreplaceable electronic circuits overloaded and exploded one by one. Arcs of electricity danced between them, turning the arcane machinery into charred remains. The exquisite runes inscribed on the cave walls, personally placed by the Emperor, vanished into smoke. Accompanied by a loud bang, the lighting network in the room went out. The Emperor gazed at the doors. His grand plan and centuries of effort were ruined in an instant. Surging flames rushed out from within the doors, incinerating those who could not retreat in time. A massive crimson giant, his body burning fiercely from the arduous journey. Magnus's single eye bloomed with golden light, sweeping over the custodians gathering around the golden doors. Father. Magnus. Father and son's minds touched, just as they had countless times in the ocean of souls before their first meeting on Prospero. Magnus knew everything in an instant. He saw himself sitting upon the golden throne, using his own extraordinary psychic powers to guide humanity to fulfill its destiny and rule the galaxy. He would have been the key to the Emperor achieving ultimate victory, yet the great dream had been shattered by his own hand. He knew the warning he had intended to convey could not compensate for the monstrous crime he had committed by trespassing on Terra. Horus's rebellion was not worth mentioning compared to the achievements Father had planned for him. Magnus wept uncontrollably. Losing the guidance of his will, the spell that had sent him to Terra immediately lost its anchor. Magnus did not resist, allowing his consciousness to be pulled back into his body. He had once taken pride in his psychic powers surpassing all other Primarchs. Open black lens bracket. I once took pride in discovering secrets that Nimrod failed to witness, yet now I have destroyed Father's dream. Close black lens bracket. Now, only endless regret remained. In the reflecting caves, all the psychic thralls had perished. Their souls had been extracted by the spell and offered to the great entity of the ocean of souls, leaving only withered husks. Father. Magnus strode away through the crimson mist, tears falling like pearls. Hather watched his father leave directly, almost like a fugitive, ignoring their loud inquiries. Hather looked around at the psychic crystals shining on the inner walls of the cave. Just as my master said, Father has committed a grave error. The wolves are coming. I must hurry to complete my master's task. For more thrilling fanfiction stories like this, check out my channel Fanfic Audiobook. Dive into epic adventures, mysterious realms, and legendary journeys brought to life through immersive storytelling. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing audiobooks.